Welcome to r/relationships, where Karen is demanding her boyfriend meal preps for her. Am I the jerk for not meal prepping for my vegetarian partner? I spend most weekends doing meal prep for the upcoming week. It's kind of my thing. I usually make meals with meat, like rice bowls with ground beef and vegetables. It helps me stay on track with eating healthier and avoiding snacking, especially since I'm trying to lose some weight. My partner, who's 28, is a vegetarian by choice, and we've been together long enough that we've got a rhythm for meals most of the time. I do a lot of the cooking because I genuinely enjoy it, and her retail job has her working weird hours. When we cook dinner together, I often make meals where meat can be added later or dishes that are just vegetarian, like chickpea bowls or veggie stir-fries. For meal prep though, it's all about what works for me during the week. Lately, she's been dropping comments about how she wishes I'd meal prep for her too. I usually make extra carbs, like rice or potatoes, and usually some veggies she can use for her meals. I thought that was enough since she's always said she doesn't like having too much food ready and prefers cooking fresh when she's home. But this morning, things escalated. She got really upset that I had all my lunches set for the week while she only had the extra rice I made. I told her I'm happy to keep making extra sides for her, but I already spend around an hour and a half on my meal prep. Adding another 30 to 45 minutes to cook separate meals just for her feels like a lot. I also gave her the option to take my prepared meals, but they've got meat, so that was a no-go. That's when she suggested that I go vegetarian too, which honestly is a non-starter. I don't like soy-based protein substitutes, and she doesn't like beans. When I eat solely vegetarian meals, I end up hungry all the time, and that just doesn't work for me. She stormed out after our conversation and hasn't responded to my texts all day. I'm sitting here wondering if I'm the jerk for not meal prepping for her or if we're just at a crossroads with this. It's not like I'm refusing to cook for her altogether. I just don't want to double my meal prep workload. To add to this, she finally texted back and dropped a curveball. She said, "I thought we were a team. What are you going to do when the future kids go vegetarian? Are you just going to make them cook their own meals?" This feels like a bigger issue than I initially thought. It's gone from a disagreement about meal prep to some deeper conversation about how we handle food and potentially our future parenting styles. Now I'm questioning if I missed some bigger signals here or if this is just one of those things couples have to work through. Not the jerk. I would maybe offer a trade-off. What chore could she take on that would give you an hour back somewhere else? But either way, you do not have to prep an entirely different menu. You're setting yourself up for the week. She could choose to do it with you. She could prep something to go in the oven and you could pop it in while you're cooking. She could take the rice or potatoes and just add a few things. She's an adult. I'm vegetarian, and I would never expect someone to spend extra time making me separate meal preps, and I certainly wouldn't expect my husband to go vegetarian to suit me, so I personally think she's being unreasonable and that you're not the jerk. Am I the jerk for having 2 twin beds in my guest room instead of a queen and refusing to let my in-laws change the room? This happened earlier this year, and thankfully, my in-laws are no longer staying with us. For some context, my husband, who's 24, and I, 24 female, have been married for 2 years. I'm a social worker and he's an electrician. We own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. We've got our bedroom, a home office, and a guest room. Pretty standard setup. Now, let me explain a bit about my job. I work in a state with one of the worst foster care systems in the country. There are way too many kids in care and not even close to enough foster homes. Because of this, a lot of kids end up stuck in hospitals, psych facilities, or group homes. And sometimes there's literally nowhere for them to go, so they end up sleeping on the floor of our offices in sleeping bags. It's heartbreaking. As social workers, we sometimes take them home for the night if we can't find placements, especially sibling groups. My husband and I don't have kids, but he's super supportive of what I do. So our guest room is set up specifically for situations like this. It has 2 twin beds, both with pull-out trundles underneath. That way, I can house up to 4 kids comfortably. I've worked hard to make the room look warm and welcoming because these kids are already going through so much. Now, earlier this year, my husband's brother and his wife, my in-laws, hit some tough times. They both lost their jobs and couldn't renew their lease, so they were scrambling to find new work and a place to live. My husband and I agreed to let them stay with us for 2 months. I wasn't thrilled about it, but it felt like the right thing to do. The problem started almost immediately. They took one look at the guest room and had a meltdown over the twin beds. I tried to explain that the room is set up that way for foster kids, but they didn't care. They wanted me to either move the beds out or put them in storage so they could put a queen air mattress in there. Here's the thing. First, the beds can't even be pushed together because of the frames. Second, the room is small and awkwardly shaped, so a queen air mattress wouldn't even fit without taking the beds out entirely. Third, we don't have a garage, so there's nowhere to store the beds anyway. But most importantly, I didn't want to change it. That room is set up for kids who need a safe, stable place, not for grown adults who should have been grateful we were letting them stay for free. I also didn't want them getting too comfortable and tempted to overstay their welcome. They were supposed to be there temporarily, not indefinitely. When they started complaining, my husband shut it down. He told them flat out that if they didn't like it, they could get a hotel. He also made it clear that if they kept whining, they'd have to leave. Bless this man, because he was not having it. Well, they stayed, but they made sure everyone in the family knew how awful we were for making them sleep in twin beds. They tried to paint us as these horrible, selfish people who didn't care about their situation. My husband clapped back by telling everyone to mind their own business. To make matters worse, my in-laws didn't lift a finger the whole time they were here. They didn't clean up after themselves, didn't contribute to groceries or bills, and just generally acted like entitled brats. Meanwhile, I was still working crazy hours and trying to manage the chaos at work, and my husband was busy with his job. When they finally left, it was like a massive weight had been lifted. But the fallout was messy. Some of my husband's family members think we were total jerks for not accommodating them better, but honestly, I don't care. I'd rather keep that room ready for kids who actually need it than bend over backwards for ungrateful adults. So Reddit, am I the jerk? There are plenty of people in my husband's family who think we are, but I'd love to hear some outside perspectives. They have a lot of demands for people who get free housing. Don't let them come back. Those kids sound like they need a place to stay a lot more than these spoiled in-laws. If anyone takes their side, tell them to house these two. By the way, I'm happy that people like you and your husband exist. Am I the jerk for refusing to watch my neighbor's kid before school because she kept nagging me? I'm a 35-year-old stay-at-home mom with two kids, John, who's 10, and Ava, who's 8. At the beginning of the school year, my neighbor, Zoe, who's 42 and works full-time, asked if I could watch her 9-year-old daughter, Sue, a couple of mornings a week before school. She said she was in a pinch and couldn't find anyone else. I agreed, thinking it would just be a simple neighborly favor. I like helping others, and it seemed manageable. But wow, I had no idea what I was signing up for. Sue and my kids did not get along from the get-go. John and Ava are super active. They're into sports, art projects, and playing outside. Sue? She's glued to her phone 24/7 and doesn't seem interested in anything else. She'd sit there pouting when my kids wanted to do their own thing instead of entertaining her. It made things awkward and tense. A few weeks into the school year, Zoe called me out of the blue. She was upset because I let the kids walk or bike to school. She said it was unsafe and asked me to drive Sue instead. I told her no. If Sue was old enough to have a phone, she was old enough to walk or bike like the other kids. I thought that was the end of it, but no. A week later, she called again, asking me to cook real sausage for Sue because the veggie sausage I made for my kids wasn't cutting it. My family doesn't buy meat, and I told her flat out that Sue could eat what I cooked or she could make her own food. For the entire first semester, Zoe kept up with the requests. Don't let the kids listen to certain music. Don't let multiple kids on the trampoline. Supervise them constantly while they're outside. It was endless. Every time I'd say no and she'd back off, apologizing for bothering me, but then a new request would come the next week. It was exhausting. By the end of the semester, I sat her down and told her I wasn't going to make any more adjustments to accommodate Sue. My family wasn't doing anything unsafe or unreasonable. If she wasn't happy, there were plenty of other families in the neighborhood who might be willing to help. She seemed understanding at the time, and I thought things would get better. Then, just before winter break, my kids came home and I asked if they were excited about the time off school. John immediately said, "I'm more excited for 2.5 weeks with no Sue." Ava giggled and nodded along. That comment hit me hard. My kids were more relieved about avoiding Sue than enjoying their break. A few days later, Zoe texted me again. She thanked me for helping with Sue and asked if I could start watching her a couple of afternoons a week as well, so she could have more me time. I told her it wasn't going to work anymore. I explained that my kids didn't mesh well with Sue and that I didn't want to deal with more of her requests. She begged me to reconsider, promising I could handle things however I wanted. She even apologized for overstepping before. I felt bad because she genuinely seemed desperate, but I told her it was too late. I had already made my decision. My husband and kids fully supported me, but some of the other moms in the neighborhood didn't. They said I was being selfish and that moms are supposed to help each other. Then things took a wild turn. One of the moms, Jen, called me and asked what had happened with Zoe. When I explained everything, she was shocked. Turns out, Zoe had been telling everyone that she paid me $100 a day to watch Sue, but I was a nightmare. According to her, I let them watch R-rated movies, gave them candy for breakfast, and even called her a stuck-up jerk when she made a reasonable request. She also claimed my kids bullied Sue so badly that she came home crying every day, and when she confronted me, I denied it. Supposedly, I even demanded $200 a day to keep watching her brat. I was floored. None of this was true, and I had the text to prove it. I showed Jen everything. She believed me and promised to help me set the record straight, but now none of the moms will even talk to me. All of John and Ava's playdates have been canceled. I'm worried this will affect my kids' friendships. Zoe's family has lived in this town for years, and we're still relatively new here. Even if Jen convinces people that Zoe lied, I'm still scared people will be suspicious of me. I can deal with my own reputation taking a hit, but I'm heartbroken at the idea that my kids might lose their friends over this, all because I decided I didn't want to provide free childcare anymore. I like the request for me time with no reciprocation offered. Then, moms help moms, but only if it benefits me. Not the jerk. You were kind and generous. Just found out I'm pregnant and my boyfriend might be going on a trip for 2 weeks with his ex and son. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years and we just found out I'm pregnant. He already has a 4-year-old son, and let me tell you, the co-parenting situation with his ex-wife is messy. To put it bluntly, she's still very much in love with him and it's painfully obvious. Oh, and nobody knows about the pregnancy yet. Recently, we were talking about what the next few months would look like. You know, figuring out how to juggle everything with a baby on the way. That's when he brought up that his ex wants to take their son to America to visit his brother. For context, the brother has never met the son or the ex-wife, so it's kind of a big deal. But here's the part that caught me off guard. She's planning to take the son without my boyfriend. I was like, wait a minute, isn't it his family? Shouldn't he be the one facilitating the introduction? It's a huge milestone for his son to meet his uncle, and it feels weird for her to be the one making the trip. Then he casually mentioned that she asked him if he wanted to go with her, but he declined because flying to America would be way too expensive right now. I couldn't keep quiet. I told him that he really should be there for something like this. It's his son, his brother, his family. Why is his ex-wife stepping in to handle something so significant? It just doesn't sit right with me. I also pointed out that her going alone to meet his brother and stay with him is, well, strange. Like, what are the vibes there? Not saying I'd be thrilled if my boyfriend went on the trip either, but it just seems like if anyone should be taking the son, it's him, not her. She's one of those overbearing parents who think she and her kid are this inseparable unit. She even said before that she and her son are one entity. Yeah, it's as intense as it sounds. I suggested they hold off on the trip until next year when things are a little more settled. I mean, I'll be 7 months pregnant when this trip is supposed to happen. If my boyfriend ends up going, I'm stuck at home, pregnant as heck, while he's off gallivanting around with his ex and their kid. Even though I initially said he should be there for his son's sake, the thought of it just doesn't sit right with me now. Anyway, he brought it up with his ex, and they're considering a new plan. Maybe they'll all go to Ireland instead for 2 weeks so his brother can meet them there. His dad lives in Ireland too, so they'd visit him as well. But again, I'm sitting here like, why does this involve her at all? Why does it have to be some joint family trip with his ex-wife tagging along? It's not that I don't trust my boyfriend. I love him to bits and he's an amazing dad. But there's a clear boundary issue here and it's making me really cautious. This whole dynamic feels off. The idea that this is the norm, that he's going to take trips with his ex while I'm at home pregnant, makes me wonder how this is all going to work once our baby is born. Am I overreacting for feeling this way? Maybe, but I can't help thinking this whole thing could wait until next year. It just feels like the boundaries between them are way too blurry, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to navigate this. Why can't you go too at a later time, perhaps after your baby is born? You haven't met his family either after 2 years, so why not meet and also introduce both of his kids at the same time? You'll have to balance his relationship with his ex for the entirety of your relationship with them. Karen stole $50,000 from my bank account. Info. I've been with my girlfriend, who's 27, for 5 years. She loves her sister a ton, which is a good thing, as I believe supporting and helping your siblings, as long as it doesn't ruin your own life. You will understand why I say this later on. We just put down a mortgage on a house in the suburbs of a large city. I, 28 male, work in tech as a software developer with a master's degree in computer science. I make quite a lot of money, so money issues never arose. Girlfriend doesn't work and does chores and cooking in the house. Both of us agreed on this. I was gonna propose to my girlfriend next year, but a problem arose about 2 years ago. For the last 2 years, probably longer, girlfriend has been sending money to her younger sister. Let's call her Emily. Emily got pregnant at 20 years old. Emily works as a waitress. The father is bouncing from job to job. Emily says that he is very lazy. He'll disappear hours at a time without telling Emily where he's going or what he's doing. Emily has asked my girlfriend on several occasions for money. My girlfriend, being the nice and sweet person she is, says yes all the time. It started off as paying for diapers, no problem. Then baby clothes, which also no problem. Then daycare, which I just brushed off. I talked with my girlfriend saying we can't always pay for everything and that helping out for a couple things is okay, but not everything. Girlfriend reassured me and said it would be stopping soon once they got their feet picked up, which is fine. One day I hired a financial planner. The next day I get an email saying my account has sent approximately 50,000 US dollars for the last 10 months. I have around $20,000 sitting in my account. I talk with my girlfriend and she apologizes and says she knew that I wouldn't want her sending money to her sister and how she just cares about her sister. We've been paying for everything. Insurance, rent, car payments, daycare, clothing for all three of them, dinners, dates, going out expenses. It is partly my fault because I never check my bank account. Girlfriend showed me text messages between her and Emily saying she needs the money. I then noticed the pattern where Emily would say, "Hey, can you send me money? I don't have money for this." And of course, girlfriend says yes. I brush it off and girlfriend says she won't send anymore. The next day, girlfriend sends her $1,000 because they needed car repairs. I talked with girlfriend and we got into an argument where she says that she will always help her sister no matter what. I understand to an extent. We argue trying to understand each other's point of view. As stated before, we had $20,000 and now we're down to $19,000. And then how about the next time? And the next time after that, on top of our own expenses. Girlfriend then decided that she needs some time alone and that she will be at her mother's for the time being. Now I'm all alone in this house and I thought I would live here with the girl of my dreams. Am I the jerk for arguing with my girlfriend for caring about her sister too much? Edit. Thank you everyone for your support. I never thought that my situation would blow up to thousands of people. I'll try to answer some questions the best I can. I make around $150,000 a year as a lead software developer. As someone who has no kids, dogs, or any major responsibility besides myself and a girlfriend, I never check my account. She comes from a cultural family where family is everything and money is just paper. She texted me earlier saying how it should always be family first and that money didn't mean anything without family and how we should help close family like siblings in their time of need. At this point, I told her I needed time to myself and told her not to come back until I'm ready to talk. I apologize if my sentences aren't making sense, as whiskey is my only friend right now. I also forgot to mention we started dating before all this money came into play, so I trusted her. Another edit. I'm more sad by the betrayal than the money. Money will come back, but time will never come back. 5 whole years, my proposal plan, my life plan, my future kids I dreamt of having with her one day, all gone. All the things we've said to each other, all the late night wine-drunk times we spent, all the dates, all the flowers I gave her. I really tried with all of my power to be the best man she can have. I would have trusted her with my life, and now what do I get back? $50,000 gone. This is a massive red flag. If she's taking liberties with money in your joint account to fund the lives of 3 people now, don't you think this will continue in the future? $50,000 is a lot of money. She lied when she said she would stop, and then leaves when you call her out on it. Please do yourself a favor and change the locks, terminate access to your account, and get yourself a new girlfriend. You are her cash cow, and she's using you. Not the jerk. Separate your bank accounts. Do not let her use your money for her sister. That sister's gonna be a leech for your entire life. So yeah, obviously Emily comes packaged with your girlfriend. Better reconsider your entire relationship because I have a feeling that Emily ain't gonna let the golden goose go. I hope the house isn't under joint names and that you can finance the mortgage on your own. My friend is wrongfully suing my dentist. I, 55 female, have a friend, Jean, of similar age. She's not what I'd call a close friend, but I've known her for a long time. She's the type of person who always thinks she's right and won't back down easily from anything. A few months ago, she had a toothache and asked me which dentist I used. My dentist is amazing, so I recommended him. She has a dental phobia and asked me to go with her to her appointment. He was lovely to her, spent a long time talking to her, explaining everything, put her at ease. She had a big abscess under one of her back teeth. He said it either needed a root canal and a crown or extracting. The root canal and crown would be around 1,000 pounds total, and he was really clear to her that it was a big abscess and that there was no guarantee that root canal would work. He actually said the odds were 50-50 and it might be better to extract the tooth and put that money towards an implant or bridge instead. He said he could offer no form of guarantee or refund if problems happened. He was clear in what he said, and I know she heard and understood that the odds weren't great. She decided to go ahead with the treatment. I went with her to one further appointment, but not all of them. Fast forward a few months. Everything was okay initially after the root canal and crown, but then she got another infection. She had antibiotics, but the problem persisted and she ended up having the tooth out. She is livid. You'd think he was the worst person in the world from what she says about him. She wants to sue him and has been to a lawyer to get advice. She's claiming that she wasn't properly warned that the treatment may not work. Apparently, the lawyer is confident she'll get a payout. He's told her that it'll be hard for him to prove he properly warned her, and dentists are insured for this kind of stuff. They think his insurance will pay out because it won't be worth their time to try and defend it. I'm really annoyed at her for this because I know she's lying about not being warned. I really like the dentist and feel awful for him that he's facing legal action over this, and that I was the one who introduced her to him. I worry that it will reflect badly on me in his eyes when I see him in the future. I've argued with her about it because I witnessed him warning her, but she says it's none of my business. Her view is it doesn't hurt him because he'll have insurance. Like I said, she doesn't back down from things. I feel so strongly about this that I want to send a written statement to the dentist that he can use back against her. I would state that I witnessed the appointment when he warned her and that she clearly heard and understood what he said. I know that in doing so, I would probably lose her as a friend, but to be honest, I don't care about that at this point. My husband thinks I should do it. He's never liked Jean. He describes her as a nightmare and thinks I'm best off without her as a friend. So, would I be the jerk if I did this? Not the jerk. Not only is she scamming, but it will put a mark on his record professionally and more than likely result in him having to pay higher insurance rates. You would not be the jerk. Back up the dentist. You know he warned her. You heard him. You are a good witness for him. Not the jerk if you do. I'd flat out tell this friend to knock it off, or you will help the dentist because you and I both know you were told the odds. What a crappy friend. If she's so sue happy, she should have picked a random out of the yellow pages. Am I the jerk for making my girlfriend cheap lasagna? I, 24 female, make a delicious lasagna from scratch that takes hours and lots of money to make. It's so good that friends and family ask me to make it for them for birthdays instead of getting them a gift. Last month, I decided to make it for my girlfriend, who's 23. I spent a lot of money on the ingredients, and then more than half of the day making the herb-infused fresh pasta dough, the ragu, etc. When she came over, she took a couple of bites and said that she didn't understand why I spent so much time and money on it because it tasted exactly like the lasagna that she would make with stuff she bought from the store. She said it tasted exactly like it. My feelings were a little hurt, not gonna lie, but I understand that everyone has their own tastes, and I just told her I'm sorry she didn't like it that much and then kept it pushing and suggested that we watch a movie. Flash forward to yesterday. She was coming over for dinner and I asked her what she wanted to eat, and she said lasagna. So I popped over to the store and got panzani sauce and pasta sheets to make it because A, she said my lasagna and the quick-made one tasted the exact same, so no need to spend a lot on ingredients, and B, because even if I had wanted to make my recipe, I wouldn't have had the time since it takes me an entire afternoon, which is why it's a special occasion thing. So she showed up at my house, took one bite of the lasagna, and then spit it out and said that it tasted different. When I told her how I made it, she got really upset at me and said that I wasn't putting in effort and that she was expecting to have a real meal and not something cheap. I pointed out the comment she made the last time and she rolled her eyes and said she was clearly exaggerating. So then I got upset because, what? The situation got brought up to our mutual friends. Most have stayed out of it, but two of them think I'm the jerk because my girlfriend clearly meant that she wanted my special lasagna, which is why she asked for it as dinner, and that I should have let her know beforehand that I was going to make one using pre-made sauce, etc. I think it was clear that that's what I was going to do because she literally asked for lasagna 2 hours before coming over, which is not enough time to make the special one even if I wanted to. Am I the jerk? To clarify, the cheap lasagna tasted just fine, pretty tasty even, just not all that comparable to the original one in my opinion. Your lasagna just saved your life. It revealed your girlfriend for the petty, ungrateful person she really is. Now you can safely escape before you signed a lease, bought a car, got married, or had kids. Not the jerk, and praise be lasagna. Not the jerk. Boy, you really can't win with her, can you? You make good lasagna, she complains. You make simple lasagna, she complains. That must be exhausting to figure out what she actually wants. You don't move cars in the wrong spaces? Well, I'll park here then. This happened to me back in early 2015. We just recently made the move to purchase a new electric vehicle. At the time, the batteries in electric vehicles were small compared to today and only had around a 60 to 80 mile range. Well, one of our first larger journeys was to a shopping center about 60 miles away. We chose to go to this shopping center as it was also one of the first places to have electric vehicle charging compared to other shops, and at the time, the charging was still free. So we hoped to go there, get a free charge while shopping, and then head home with a full battery. Before we set off, we checked the charger was working through its app, and once we were happy, we made the journey. When we arrived, we found where the chargers were placed and ran into our issue. They were working fine, but they were fully blocked by non-electric vehicle cars. The bays were marked, but for whatever reason, people had parked in them. No worries, I thought, and I went into the center to find the information desk to ask if they would announce for whoever had parked there to come move their car. They said they didn't do that and that they wouldn't. I explained I needed to charge to get home, and could they please make an exception? They would not, and so I angrily dropped a hint about them clamping the car or leaving a ticket on it. They said they don't do that either. In fact, the car park was not monitored at all. It was free to park there for the day, so no cameras were needed to monitor the car park, and there were no car park attendants. So, you don't do anything about incorrectly parked cars? I asked. The answer I got was a firm no from the information desk person, and they really didn't want to be bothered again. As I got back to the car, I saw there was a pavement to the edge of the chargers. The chargers were situated close to the building, but the pavement was in a place that wouldn't be used much when walking around the car park. It also didn't lead anywhere, and more importantly, didn't lead to any disabled or parent parking spots. It was also very wide, which gave me an idea. I then drove to the end of the car park, mounted the wide pavement, made sure there was no one around, and slowly drive to the chargers. My cable then reached, I started the charge, locked the car, and went shopping. I got back to the car at the end of the day with some form of employee, possibly security, but wasn't sure, in front of the center looking perplexed at our car parked on the pavement. I just unlocked the car, pulled the cable away, and drove off with a full charge. Safe to say, the next time I went, a year later, there were signs on the electric vehicle bays stating parking restrictions. There was a fine for non-electric vehicles, and they were marked with more paint to make them extra obvious. Oh, and a couple of bollards at the end of the pavement where I mounted the curb. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to a child-free wedding if my son can't go? There's a lot of stories on here regarding weddings and child-free weddings and overall entitlement, but I want to know if I'm right by saying this situation differs to the rest or if I'm just being a jerk. My younger brother and sister-in-law are getting married next year, 2024, and sent out the RSVP earlier this February, which is when this whole fight started. The invitations include tickets to the wedding, along with the dress code and a semi-letter letting the attendees know that this is a child-free wedding, along with a few other formalities and rules, whatever they want to call them. Not my wedding, not my rules to make. Plus, I don't have kids. My only kid is 16, and I'm a single mom, so the whole idea of going to the wedding to enjoy a fun night to myself without kids is not something new, nor is it something I've had to worry about for a while. The issue isn't with the rule. The issue is that the invitation originally came with 2 tickets, and we didn't think much of it because he's not a kid, so why wouldn't he be invited? Turns out, the no kids rule involves anyone under the age of 18, and we found out when my son brought up the wedding during a family dinner, and both my sister-in-law and brother seemed taken aback, which then led to questions and them finding out that they had accidentally sent out 2 tickets, which then led to an awkward conversation and my son getting uninvited in front of the people present. I'm genuinely trying really hard to understand their side and the fact it's their wedding, not mine, but I can't get past the idea of the way they did so and how they made my son feel. Also, the fact that I had my son at a really young age and his dad was never present, so my brother was like a big brother to my son. So I think my son and me are quite hurt at the idea of my son not attending. I would say me choosing to not attend is nothing personal, but I'd be lying if I did so. I've been getting called immature, petty, and a jerk, but I think the situation would have been different had it been made clear my son wasn't going to be invited from the start and not to get his invitation revoked randomly. Edit. Am I confused and a little upset my son isn't invited to the wedding? Yes, sure. Is that the reason I'm debating on not going? No. My decision to not go is based entirely on their attitude through what's been going on this month, and it's also been based on my son's current feelings. If in a year the situation has bypassed, regardless of my son going or not, then my decision might change. But for now, I'll stand behind my son and his decision and his feelings. They've been calling you immature, petty, and a jerk? Who called you those names? It's pretty blatant that if someone invites you to something with stipulations you can't comfortably meet, declining is the obvious and acceptable answer. Not the jerk if the couple called you names. No jerks here if someone else did, since it's not their conflict. Am I the jerk for refusing to stop cooking with meats and spices at my dad and stepmom's house? I like cooking. When I'm with my mom and stepdad, I cook a lot with my stepdad's mom, my step-grandma. But when I'm at my dad's and stepmom's house, 1 weekend a month, plus some holidays and summers, things are different. My stepmom is not a good cook. I'm sorry, but she's not. She has sensory issues. She doesn't cook meat, barely uses any spices, and a bunch of other things. She also just undercooks, overcooks, undersalts, all of that. In the past, I've kind of tried to help her and cook with her and been like, what if we add lemon? But first of all, she doesn't like my input. She wants to do things her way. And second of all, there's sensory issues, so she doesn't want to cook differently than she does. If she ate what I made, she would not like it. At their house, my stepmom only cooks foods that she's comfortable with, which, since my dad never cooks, means any home-cooked meal is something she eats. She doesn't care what any of us eat when she's not around, like a friend's house or takeout. Officially, if we're like at a restaurant, or if I make my own food for dinner, she also doesn't care. Like if we all go to a restaurant, they wouldn't stop me from ordering a burger. But she would be kind of uncomfortable. Not mad, just uncomfortable. For her, it's the smell mostly, but it's also kind of a mental thing. I don't know how to explain it. She is in therapy. That's why I think she's able to pretend like it's okay. But because it bothers her, what would happen is that my dad would order vegetarian. Their kids, 3 and 4, would get something like a kid-sized grilled cheese, and I would maybe order like a chicken burrito instead of a steak. Or like if my dad got takeout, he would throw away the bag in the downstairs trash or leave it in his car so she didn't have to smell it. I've been cooking more and more. I like cooking and do it a lot at home, but like I said, her food is so bad, that's also a motivator. I eat meat and also cook with spices and strong flavors. But my dad came into my room last night and said, out of curiosity, could I stop cooking so much and try to eat what I was served more? I said to my dad that her food was both bad and boring. I wouldn't say this to her face, obviously. My dad said I needed to go with the flow and couldn't always have my own way. And to be fair, I can't act like I haven't noticed her not being anywhere in the kitchen, like going to the bedroom if I'm making myself dinner, to be honest. But I said basically that this was her problem, not mine. Why should I have to cater to what someone else who isn't even eating the food? He said I was being rude and disrespectful to her by pushing her limits, and said it was her home too. And yeah, I could make blander food that's more safe, but what's the point? The food is for me. Not the jerk. You cook and eat what you want. She cooks and eats what she wants. If your cooking produces strong smells, you should make a basic effort to keep the smell contained. That's just good sense operating in a shared kitchen space. Beyond that, if stepmom has a problem looking at your food or thinking about your food, then that's her problem. Am I the jerk for not washing my hands at 3 a.m.? Last night, my significant other, 28 female, woke me up, 29 male, at around 3 a.m. to tell me that I had thrown our dog off the bed while sleeping. I was a bit annoyed that she woke me up, so I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water and use the restroom. I try to stay as sleepy as possible to fall back asleep quickly. When I returned to bed, my significant other told me to wash my hands, as she had apparently heard me in the restroom and noticed that I forgot to wash them in my half-asleep state. I told her that I just wanted to go back to sleep and didn't want to argue since I had sprained my ankle a bit earlier in the evening. However, she continued to ask me to wash my hands repeatedly. After some back and forth, I decided to sleep in the guest room instead of our bed. I am aware that I should wash my hands after using the restroom, but I was annoyed that my significant other wouldn't drop the issue, and I couldn't fall back asleep until about 5:30 a.m. The next morning, I woke up in a bad mood, and she asked me jokingly why I had slept in the guest room. I told her that I had slept there because she woke me up for the dog and wouldn't drop the hand washing issue. I expected an apology from her since I thought waking me up for the dog was inappropriate. However, she told me that it was my fault for not washing my hands and that I should have tried harder to fall back asleep. She said I was being dramatic and needed to get over it. I got frustrated because I had asked her to drop the issue several times during the night, but she had ignored me. I got angry and told her that I should have washed my hands, but that waking me up for the dog's comfort was ridiculous and that she should have dropped it when I asked her to. I then told her not to talk to me unless she had something else to say besides, "You're overreacting." She left for work, and I'm now typing this in my home office, feeling upset. We're at a standstill where I feel like I need an apology and she feels like I'm being dramatic. I tend to get angry quickly when I'm sleep deprived, so I know that I may be in the wrong here. I need some outside perspective. So Reddit, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If the woman was truly concerned about germs, she wouldn't be letting the dog sleep on the bed. Does she clean his paws before he enters the house with the same vehemence that she expects you to wash your hands? I can guarantee a dog has walked through many unsavory things prior to bringing it back into your floors, inside your house, that you may then track around yourself on the soles of your own feet. Not the dog's fault, just facts. Also, waking you up at that time of the morning, unfair. I suggest the next time something like dog evicted from bed happens, wake her up at bum o'clock in the morning and see how she likes it. Literally my exact thought. Dogs are dirty. Don't get me wrong, I love dogs and I have one of my own, so I know for a fact that dogs can be a little stinky. They run outside on the dirty ground and walk bacteria all through your house. So unless the girlfriend is cleaning the dog's paws after every single time he goes outside, then she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not agreeing to change our son back to public school? So I got a job at a private high school. The school gives free admission to the kids of faculty and staff, as well as to their lower grade schools. These schools are way better than the public schools in my area. I want to send my son to the private elementary school. Unfortunately, my son's mother was not really on board with this. She thought it would make things difficult since she also has a daughter who will be starting school next year. Our custody agreement has a part where we can't change our son's education without both of us agreeing, so my son couldn't go unless his mother said yes. Since the main issue she had was her daughter not being able to attend next year, I told my ex about the school's policy that siblings of current students have priority on the admission list. So with our son enrolled, she will also be able to enroll her daughter. My son's mother was happy with the idea after that, and they agreed. The school has really early deadlines for things, so my son's mother was trying to enroll her daughter for the next school year. That's when she found out that while her daughter would get priority admission, she would have to pay tuition. The school does offer scholarships, but they're more for exceptional or diverse students, so her daughter is way down on the list. My son's mother is now very upset by this and thinks I tricked her, even though it was obvious her kid wouldn't get in for free since she's not my kid. Still, she is insisting it's going to create problems down the line. For example, she thinks it will cause animosity between her daughter and our son, as he will have more opportunities. She also said it would be hard to deal with the kids being in different schools because they're far apart, about 15 to 20 minutes drive difference. She wants to change our son back to public school, but she can't unless I agree to it. I still don't see the point. She hasn't made a convincing argument. On my side, the school is way better than his old school, and he's happy and settled, and he has friends at his new school. On her side, her daughter may get a little jealous, and she may have to drive a little more on the days she has our son. Edit. Just so everyone knows, I have since told my ex that I can drive our son to and from school every day if it makes things easier. Not the jerk. You're doing what every parent should do and trying to give your son the most opportunities possible. Dealing with the locker thief in high school. This was back in the early 2000s, probably 2003 to 2004 school year. Throughout the entire year, there was a crime wave of people having their things stolen out of their locked lockers. Not everyone, but enough that everyone knew someone who it happened to. The school's only defense about this was that it was our fault for sharing locker combos with our friends. They also charged us every time we had to get the combination changed on a locker, like after a theft for instance, because it was assumed to be our fault. Well, I had my graphing calculator taken out of my locker. I also never gave out my combination to anyone, mostly because my friends were jerks and we pulled crap on each other all the time. So I was out $150 for the calculator and another $150 to change the combination, getting a locksmith to change out the lock. This is 2003 money, so it's a bit more than now. To anyone who has ever had to buy a TI-86 in 2003 or 2004, you'll know how much the things cost. Well, my dad was drinking buddies with one of the county detectives. I'll call him Detective Buddy and/or Uncle Buddy. He went in to talk to the school about these thefts going on, so he could get the security camera for the day my calculator went missing and got completely brushed off as it was a non-existent problem, and he must have given out his locker combination. The principal told him he would need a warrant to get the camera footage. Then when he got the warrant, the school fought the warrant in court, citing student privacy. Cue the pro-revenge. Detective Buddy shows up at our house with a laptop and a laptop bag. He's like, "Throw this in your locker and tell everyone you know about your brand new laptop." "Okay, sure, Uncle Buddy." 3 days later, I show up at my locker between classes and the laptop is gone. The bag too, nowhere to be seen, as is a 24-ounce bottle of Coke and possibly some pens. I take my phone out and text him that the laptop got taken. "Stand by for the crab show. Oh, and you reported the theft to the police, FYI. He replies back. "Okay," I replied, confused. I got about the rest of my day and I don't hear anything back. The following morning, Detective Buddy comes to the school with 3 uniformed officers and pulls a student, Dave, out of class, as well as his mom, who works in the front office. The principal is upset. I don't actually hear the cops, but the principal is upset to no end that he had the audacity to accuse them of theft, and he couldn't just take them out of his school, etc., etc. Well, turns out there was a tracker in the laptop bag, and Uncle Buddy got a warrant to search a particular house. The laptop had a value of over $1,000, making it a felony. The next afternoon, he set up a tent with a table just outside of school grounds. He also had a banner across the top, "If you had something stolen from your locker, see me." By the next morning, Dave and his mom made the paper. Apparently, Dave allegedly used his mom's login information to get onto the school network and get the locker combinations for basically everyone. Then he just opened random lockers looking for valuables to steal, if he didn't get info of a specific locker to steal from. When he set up the stand to get more people reporting thefts, he racked up an astounding number of charges. Each locker counted as a separate misdemeanor unless the stolen object was worth more than $1,000, in which case it was a felony. In less than a week, Uncle Buddy opened and broke an investigation, and they charged Dave and his mom with 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanor charges. When I finally got the story from Buddy, he explained what the situation was. He had me stash a brand new laptop that had a GPS tracking unit stuck in it in my locker, then get it stolen deliberately, and then he got a warrant to search the property it had been taken to. Now, the fun thing to stress is that the laptop was over $1,000 value, pushing the theft from a misdemeanor into felony level. There was also another 8 felony charges, stuff like jewelry that was taken from other people's lockers and recovered. So any of the locker break-ins that amounted to over $1,000 stolen was a felony charge, and less than $1,000 was a misdemeanor charge. Cool thing was that because the calculator and the laptop were separate days, and the combination changed between the days, he caught a felony and a misdemeanor charge off me alone. The 9 felony thefts ended up in $12,000 range total, and the 35 misdemeanor charges were somewhere in the range of $3,000 total in value. Now, that's an awful lot of stuff stolen, but I need to stress that this is only what was proven stolen. Like, this is what they caught him with in his possession and that they could trace back to someone. They also didn't let them plead to anything. It was Podunkville's highest profile crime in years, and without a doubt, one of the worst crime sprees the county had seen in decades. Next up on the revenge. Everyone who had been charged $150 to get their locker combinations changed sued the school district in a class action lawsuit. The justification was that the school did nothing to investigate the 44 proven and more than likely 200 plus cases of locker theft and then charged money to get the locker combinations changed. There were 218 people in the class, and in total, everyone got $85 after attorney's fees. The principal also lost his job for being a bonehead and not bothering to attempt to deal with a massive problem that was reported to him going on at the school. The fun thing I need to point out is that the school brought in a locksmith to change out the locks. That's why they justified charging $150. Well, the school already paid the $150 a locker, but they also had to return $100 per locker, meaning that they were out $21,800 plus their legal fees for that class action suit. Next comes the criminal trial and the fallout. The prosecutor's deal was 10 years in prison, 5 in juvie and 5 in adult prison, for Dave and 15 for Dave's mom. Well, they refused that deal and it went to trial. Dave got 1 year in prison for each felony, the state minimum, and 1 month probation for each misdemeanor. So 9 years plus 35 months of probation. His mom received 18 years of jail and 6 years probation. Having attended much of the best parts of the trial, I will say this. They had Dave on camera entering 20 plus lockers, and they had them in possession of stolen goods for every single charge they made against them. The judge was also not amused that there were likely other reported crimes that they got away with because they couldn't prove it or they weren't reported. Dave's mom got it worse. That was a fun sentencing to show up for. But the most important thing is that I got my graphing calculator back. It had my name engraved inside the battery compartment. I still have it as well as a cool story to tell. Karen uses me for food and housing. I've had enough. When I was in high school, I was friends with a popular girl, Madison. I am not a nice guy, and we were honestly friends. She was out of my league, and I never had any thoughts about a relationship with her. We remained friends when I went away to university, and I was happy for her when she got married. I work for a tech company now. Not one of the FANG companies, but they still provide some really cool stuff for their employees. Our cafeteria is free and open 24 hours a day. We can eat all of our meals there if we want to. They have a nutritionist that makes sure the meals are tasty and healthy. I take advantage of the food on a fairly regular basis, but I still keep food at my apartment to make myself meals I learned from my dad. And I keep Fruit Loops, which the cafeteria does not stock. 5 weeks ago, Madison left her husband and asked if she could stay with me while she figured things out. I agreed since I have a spare room and we're friends. I thought it was a more temporary thing. She has a job, and I think she has access to a joint account with her husband. I thought she would be here for a couple of weeks, then go to her folks or settle her problems with her husband. Instead, she hasn't left my house other than to work. She ate all of my food in the fridge and the pantry. I went grocery shopping once so far, but she ate everything again and didn't even offer to replace it. I asked her when she was going to be moving on, but she says she doesn't know. I asked her for some money for groceries, and she said she hasn't been paid. It's been 5 weeks. I don't think anyone holds back wages that long. So last week, instead of going to Whole Foods, I just started eating all of my meals either at work or at a restaurant on the way home. She asked me when I was going shopping, but I said I was too busy with work. She offered to go shopping for us if I gave her the money. I said I was too busy to cook food at home. She's saying that I'm a jerk for trying to use food to control her or too cheap to help her out. She thinks I'm trying to be with her. I'm already not charging her rent. She's still beautiful, but I'm seeing a side of her that I've never seen before. Not the jerk. I know this is not an advice sub, but you need to get her out of your house. This has the potential to go sideways really badly. Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but it sounds like she thinks you are a better meal ticket, both figuratively and literally, than her husband. I hope I'm wrong. I don't see why you aren't communicating this with her. I have no romantic interest in you. I'm not going to support you financially other than providing a temporary place to stay. It's time for you to find another place to stay. You have until this date to move out. For the food thing, not the jerk. Let me get this straight. So you're not a nice guy, yet you allow this beautiful, popular girl who left her husband to live in your house, eat all your food, exert control over you, and you're not getting anything in return beyond friendship? Ever heard of an orbiter? These are the guys who basically bow down to beautiful girls even though they know they'll never have a chance with them. Quit being an orbiter, bro. This is what happens when young men grow up with a lack of self-confidence. Next thing you know, some hot friend is using you for all kinds of stuff, and you keep handing it over because you think they're your friend. The reason the hotties keep orbiters around is because they know they can use you, whether for resources or as an emotional sponge when dudes like me break their hearts. I've had so many exes that I dumped who end up using their orbiters as a distraction from heartbreak. Next thing you know, she finds another guy who looks like me. Over 6 foot, gym rat, blonde hair, blue eyes. Then she ghosts the orbiter until she needs him again. The funny thing is, they will never admit that this is what they do. But my sister has always been honest with me though, and she has straight up told me that her and all of her friends laugh about this stuff all the time because they all know it's true.
Hey Reddit boy, how's it feel to be my orbiter?
Kinda like getting a bill in the mail that you weren't expecting. Am I the jerk for blowing up on my husband over chicken alfredo? I, 38 female, am married to my husband, 42 male, and we've been together since our early 20s, and we have 3 kids who are all under the age of 10. He's a mechanic and works anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week, while I work as a hostess 3 days a week at a restaurant while the kids are at school. I do the majority of the housework and childcare, and I don't mind, as I understand he has a hard job and he works a lot. We get the kids on the bus every morning because he leaves for work about 10 minutes afterward. All I ask of him is to do his laundry, as his clothes are covered in oil and grime and need to go in by themselves, and pick up after himself because the kids destroy the house enough. A couple times a week, he'll help with dinner and clean up at the end of the day as well. Over the last 2 months, he's completely stopped helping. He dumps his clothes on the laundry room floor, his half of the bedroom is a mess, he leaves cans and wrappers all over the living room, and he's even stopped getting the kids up, which has upset them as they love their mornings with dad. He's also been coming home hours later than usual. I've been letting it slide as he seems very stressed out, but a few days ago, he snapped at me for letting his clothes go unwashed. I reminded him that he always did his own laundry and he hadn't asked me to do it. I'd been doing it, I just hadn't gotten to it yet. He just grumbled and went to go watch TV. Last night I made chicken alfredo. We have it about once a week because the kids love it and no one's ever complained. Well, he complained and moaned through the whole dinner. Said that since I'm not taking care of the house, I should at least put a good meal on the table. That I've just been letting the whole family go to heck and I should be ashamed of myself for treating him and his kids like that. He called me a bad wife and a mother in front of our kids. I told the kids to go to their rooms and I snapped. I screamed at him about how much I do for the household, that if it wasn't for me, the place would be trashed and he has no right to treat me like this over chicken alfredo. We went back and forth for a while before he left and I have no idea where he went and he isn't answering my calls or texts. I feel bad now, as I shouldn't have reacted like that, especially because I know he's just stressed from work, but it all just kind of built up and came out at once. I just want to know if I was wrong for freaking out on him like that. Update. I called my husband for the 100th time because he still hadn't come home and the kids wanted to know where he was, and a woman answered. I didn't recognize her voice and he doesn't have a sister. I asked her to put me on the phone with my husband and she asked who I was. I said I was his wife and she laughed into the phone and told me he was busy. We went back and forth with her laughing at me the whole time before telling me she'll send him home soon and hanging up. It's now the next morning and he's still not home. I really didn't think he was cheating. I had really hoped this was just a rough patch, but it looks like most of you were right. I'm heartbroken and a little in shock and not really sure what to do right now. My brother said I should come stay with him, and I might, or maybe just bring the kids so they don't have to see us fight. I might update again, I might not, but I'm sure you all know where this is heading anyway. Not the jerk, OP. I sincerely hope I'm mistaken, but your husband may be having an affair and setting you up to be the bad wife and mother to justify his behavior. That's what happened to me. OP, I'm sorry. Something is awry and it's not you. Couples counseling now, but keep a watch on your money and protect your kids. Sounds like your husband is checking out. Not the jerk. Significant other expects me to support them even though they were wrong. So I was talking to a few coworkers the other day about how my partner, we'll call them Taylor, can be sometimes difficult with service workers. For background, my coworkers and I are all customer service workers. Anyways, so Taylor and I went out for dinner a few days ago to a restaurant we're regulars at. We go so often that the staff knows our orders, which booth we prefer, and which waitstaff we prefer. That being said, we get a discount and special promotional letters from the restaurant often. Well, prior to going, Taylor brought along an expired $5 coupon. I told them that the restaurant will probably not honor it and not to get upset. They replied, "Oh, they'll accept it." Once the bill came, Taylor presented the coupon and the waiter informed us that the coupon had expired a week ago. Taylor became furious and pulled a Karen and said,
We come here so often. I don't understand why you're being so difficult. I want to speak to a manager.
"Oh, great." So the manager came over and explained that while she couldn't accept the coupon because we're regulars, that she'd be happy to remove the drink charge, which would have been $10 off. But no, Taylor was adamant that the $5 coupon be honored and that they didn't want the drinks removed because we aren't a charity case. At this point, they were so loud that a lot of people were staring at us. After Taylor said that, I lost it. I said, "Hey, okay, Taylor, stop. I'll pay for the meal at full price. You're being so ridiculous, it's embarrassing." And the look Taylor gave me was a mix of hurt and betrayal. They got up and stormed out of the restaurant, and I apologized to the manager and paid for the bill. The ride back home, I just told them, "Listen, I'm sorry for embarrassing you, but how you acted really wasn't okay. They're just doing their jobs, and you shouldn't give them a hard time because you didn't read the fine print." Taylor didn't say anything during the car ride back home, and that night, I decided to sleep in the spare room since they asked for some time to think. Since then, things have been back to normal, and Taylor seems like their happy self again. Anyways, when I told this to my coworkers, they all looked shocked. "Wait, you didn't have your partner's back?" I told them no, because frankly, I'm tired of this behavior and I won't tolerate it anymore. My coworkers started laughing and said that even if their partners were in the wrong, in the moment they would have supported them to avoid embarrassing them in public, which is basically what I did. They said instead of being a jerk to my partner, I should have supported them at the restaurant, and later I should have told them that they were in the wrong. So, am I the jerk for not supporting my partner, even though they were in the wrong? Not the jerk, but your partner is. Had you supported them, then you would have been a giant jerk too. Not the jerk. Being horrible to service workers is actually a deal breaker for me personally. They're human beings and should be treated as such. Throwing a huge fit so loud that you disturb other customers is embarrassing, and over $5? Ew, I'd have the ick so bad. Sorry, OP. Why would you have her back when she was acting like a total jerk? In a place where y'all are treated very well, no less. Not the jerk. Prepare to lose any discounts and perks when you go with her though. Am I the jerk for insisting my sister-in-law to visit us more when she is a busy resident doctor and she says that she can't? My sister-in-law, married to my brother, is a resident physician who works 60 to 80-hour weeks and frequently works one or both days of the weekend. Her residency is a 7-hour drive from where me, my husband, and our daughter, who's 1.5 years old, live. My brother and I were always very close growing up and even lived in the same apartment and later the same city. We were never more than 20 to 30 minutes away from each other. I got married and had my baby, and he moved 7 hours away to be with his fiancée, now wife, pretty soon after I had my baby. It was devastating for me, as I had always pictured us being close and him being really involved as an uncle. Sister-in-law works 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. 6 to 7 days a week, but does have some golden weekends where she has Saturday and Sunday off. She usually has one per month, and then she has 3 weeks of vacation, never over Christmas or New Year's holidays. During those 1 weekend a month that she has completely off, her and my brother either stay at home because she needs to relax or will drive 2 hours to see her family. During the 3 weeks of vacation, which she is only able to take 1 week at a time, they went on a 1 week-long trip to Hawaii, a 1 week-long trip to Cancun with her family, and then 1 week where they just visited her family 2 hours away. They haven't made the trip to visit us more than 1 to 2 times a year, as they say the drive is too hard with the limited time off she has, and she's usually too tired to come anyways. But not too tired for Hawaii or Cancun. They always ask my parents and us to visit them during holidays she works, so at least we can be together and she will join every day after 5. But it's hard for us to travel with a baby. My parents have to split time visiting there and visiting us, and we need them for childcare. I've been asking my brother and sister-in-law to visit us more, even though I know her schedule is busy, and my brother got frustrated with me. When I asked him to visit alone, he said she needs him because the heavy workload has been really mentally straining on her, and quoted how resident physicians have a really high depression rate and basically called me a jerk. I feel it's unfair we have to visit all the time, considering we have a 1-year-old and also both work full-time, and feel they should balance better to visit us rather than just vacation. Am I the jerk for insisting? You're the jerk. You don't have to travel to them if it's too hard for you, but you come across as really judgmental and lacking in compassion for how they choose to spend their limited free time. Asking them to travel 7 hours each way for a visit on the rare weekend she has off is unreasonable. That would be 14 hours of driving for probably not even 24 hours of time together, including sleep hours. You say they do make the trip about twice a year, and that seems reasonable given these circumstances. You're the jerk. Going to Hawaii and staying at a hotel is a relaxing vacation. Going to stay with family who has a kid is not. Medical residency is grueling. She can't balance better. You have the right to wish you spent more time with your brother. You do not have the right to expect it though, nor to tell other people how to spend their vacation time. I cried every single day the last semester of my doctorate, and I'm an art historian. I write about pictures. She's trying to save lives 80 hours a week. You're the jerk. Am I the jerk for refusing to go on vacation with my boyfriend because he invited his friend without telling me? So in a couple of weeks, my boyfriend and I have planned to go to France for a couple of days as a romantic getaway. His own words, not mine. Just to spend some quality time together because we've both been so busy with work. I was excited about the trip and to spend some quality time with my boyfriend, but then he drops the bombshell on me. He invited one of his friends because apparently he's always wanted to see France, so my boyfriend thought he would be kind and asked his friend to come along. So this was a big shock to me, and I told my boyfriend about my concerns. He told me that his friend has already paid for his flight ticket, and he said that he was planning on either changing our hotel room to a room with 2 beds or his friend would sleep on the sofa. He did all of this without even telling me a thing. I told my boyfriend that quite frankly, I don't want his friend to come, and it was supposed to be a romantic getaway. But he said that his friend won't bother us and he'll do his own thing. But I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable with it. We argued for a bit more, with him saying that he paid for most of the trip, so he feels entitled to be able to bring his friend along. In the end, I just got so fed up, and I may be a bit dramatic, but I felt betrayed, so I just told him I wouldn't be coming if his friend was. He said I was being ridiculous and I should go since it's been paid for anyway, and I was being overly dramatic, but this is how I feel. He said I was being manipulative and cruel for making him choose between me and his friend. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He can enjoy a romantic getaway with his friend. It sounds like that's what he wants anyway. He doesn't respect you. Keep that in mind going forward. Am I the jerk for extorting my relatives by threatening to go to the police? Around 4 years ago, a relative of mine, Billy, who was 16 back then, took a collector's car of mine without my knowledge for a joyride, and he totaled it. After paying the court fine and reparations for property destruction, Billy's parents did not have the money to pay me back for the car. The car was not truly replaceable, and on the collector's market, it would have easily gone for 7 digits. Even if you count it as just a used car, it would have been high 5 digits in the aftermarket. I had insurance, but to collect, I would have had to file a police report. Billy's parents begged me not to, as it would go on his record and ruin his prospects for college. I agreed on the condition that Billy or his parents start paying me back once Billy reaches his majority, 20 in our country. We agreed on a price in the 6-digit range, but a lot closer to the used car value than the collector's value. It was about the price I paid for the car originally. We drafted an agreement that both of Billy's parents, Billy himself, and their legal witnesses all signed and sealed. 6 months ago, Billy turned 20. I waited a month for them to reach out, but nothing. At month 3, I sent a polite request for payments to start as agreed. Ignored. Sent more messages at months 4 and 5. No response. I messaged them saying if they did not start making good on what is owed, I would file a police report. Statute of limitations for Grand Theft Auto is 30 years in this country, so there's no waiting this out. They finally requested to talk. They tried to say that so much time had gone by that they had forgotten about it, and how we were family, and I didn't need the money, so could I just let it go? I wouldn't agree. I'm not expecting significant monthly payments, but I do expect to see effort to make things right. They then tried to say how Billy had grad school aspirations overseas, and his younger sister was starting college this year, and they need the money. College doesn't cost nearly as much in this country. I asked them when they could see themselves paying. They only want to start payments after their daughter has finished school. I refused. Billy can get a part-time job and start paying. Things will be tight for them, but it's unlikely they won't be able to afford their daughter's tuition. It's possible that it would affect Billy's grad school plans, if these plans are real, which I'm not sure I believe. Since then, they've been bad-mouthing me to that side of the family, saying that I'm extorted money from them by threatening Billy's future. I've been getting a stream of texts from relatives who want to talk with me. I don't see why I should act like a good relative when this is the way that they are. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Filed the police report. Billy and his parents have no intention of ever paying you what they owe you. Filed the police report and collect the insurance. Billy is the one who messed up. No reason you should pay for him. Am I the jerk for wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt to my first meeting with my girlfriend's parents? I, 28 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 23 female, for a few months. Things have gone well. We get along well so far, and I really care about her, and I hope things work out with us. Anyway, she recently invited me to come over and have dinner with her parents at their home. She still lives with them for now. We're getting more serious, and they wanted to meet me. If it's relevant, her parents are Indian immigrants to the US, and I am white. So I thought it was a completely casual meeting, and I wore an Iron Maiden t-shirt. I do happen to like the band, but that's not even why I wore it. That's just how I dress, and that shirt just happened to be clean that day. I went and met her parents and thought we had had a good meeting. However, my girlfriend is not happy with me. She feels as if me dressing in a t-shirt rather than a nicer button-up shirt was bad enough, but that wearing a shirt with skulls on it was, in her words, just obnoxious. I honestly just dressed for the meeting the way I usually do, and I didn't even think about it. I think that if she had certain standards, then she should have communicated them to me beforehand. But she thinks that what I did was obviously stupid and inappropriate, and that I should have known better. Is she right, or is she being too critical? You're the jerk, because you're an adult. Meeting someone's parents generally isn't an overly casual thing unless they specify that their parents are casual as well. Surely you own a nicer shirt than an Iron Maiden t-shirt, being an adult and all. You're the jerk. Try to put a bit more thought into your attire when meeting people for the first time, especially a girlfriend's parents. She didn't need to communicate her standards. You need to address your standards. Don't blame her for your lack of them. It's all on you. I'm amazed at the people acting like meeting the parents is a one-way street here and that he's expected to be 100% deferential. If there was an expectation, it should have been communicated to him. And in the absence of that, it's perfectly valid for an adult to dress however they feel comfortable. They're all adults. They don't get to dictate how other adults dress, nor do they get to dictate who she dates. And if they do, well, I'd like to get that out in the open as soon as possible personally. You did nothing wrong, OP, and the people insinuating that what you did was childish are the ones ironically being most childish. Adults don't whine about what other adults they know are wearing. Better to set the expectation that you don't dress up in formal wear in casual settings. Not the jerk. People judging you because of your perfectly fine clothes are very shallow. Not the jerk. Can you even imagine if the boyfriend was mad at the girlfriend for what she wore to meet his parents? Another fine example of Reddit hypocrisy going crazy on the guy because you're a dude. Am I the jerk for trashing the gift my girlfriend got me? So me, 28 male, and my girlfriend, 30 female, have been together for 8 years, and we've been living together for 4 years. Girlfriend has always been the artsy type and always has some personal project going on, but she has the tendency to get lost in her own world. We celebrated my birthday last weekend, and she ended up getting me a pencil sharpener. I don't use pencils, and the sharpener in question didn't even fit your typical number 2. It was purely for colored pencils. I also don't color. When she asked me if I liked it, I just quietly walked outside our home and tossed it in the trash. She was understandably upset and called me a jerk for doing that, claiming that I could have at least tried it. Here's the thing. She's been doing things like this ever since we started living together. She's been gifting me things that she likes and ultimately ends up using. For example, last year she got me a packet of Sailor Moon stickers. I don't even watch Sailor Moon, and she ended up using them all. She also gifted me a jewelry box one time. I don't wear jewelry, so guess who's been using it all this time? First world problems at its finest. So it's been a few days and she's still upset with me and has even got both of our parents to go off on me for trashing the gift. She even admitted she knew I would hate it and was planning on using it after I calmed down in a few days. A detail that she did share with others, but I'm still getting name called. Am I really the jerk? Edit. Nearly every comment says we need to talk about this. The thing is, we have more than once. She admitted she does this because she wants something, but decides to gift it to me to say, I tried. I asked if I gave her a wish list, would that help? And she said that she wouldn't even look at it. She, on the other hand, does have a wish list, which I do get her stuff from, and some of that stuff is actually expensive. Not the jerk. Seriously, she's buying you gifts for herself. She makes a habit of this. Have you turned it around on her yet? For the next gift you give her, get her something you really want, and she won't want. When she gets upset about that, explain that you thought that was how your relationship worked, since she buys things she wants when you get a gift. Sister-in-law and niece destroyed my plants, so I banned them from my house. Years ago, I really got into houseplants and started to collect them. Over the years, I've had up to 70, but whittled my collection down to about 35, just the ones I really love. My niece, Jenny, who's 14, has developed an interest in plants and will come over and we will talk about them, and she helps with propagation and repotting. I had to go out of town for 2 weeks to take care of some work stuff, so I asked sister-in-law and Jenny if they could plant sit for me. I told Jenny I would pay, but also give her a few cuttings as a trade-off. They agreed, and when they came over, I gave a tour and explained the care needed, and also showed off a few prized plants. Sister-in-law asked how much a few of them ran me, and I did share. This didn't seem weird because the family knows, and I've gotten some plants as gifts. Well, I returned from my trip and was horrified. They watered and gave the right amount of light, but they also decided to give a lot of my plants haircuts. Big ones. My prized Cebu blue mother plant was destroyed. The climbing one too. My mandula had been done the same. My golden that I trained up the stairwell. My string of pearls, hearts, and ruby necklace, all destroyed. My silver stripe. The worst was that my pink princess Philo had been reduced to 2 leaves, and my albo is down to 3. I don't even think they got nodes necessarily. These plants are expensive and prized. I basically broke down, and when they came to meet me to give me back my key, I screamed and screamed at them. Jenny started crying, saying I said I would give her cuttings, so she thought it was okay. I screamed at her to go home and get me what she stole from me and bring it back now, because she knew I didn't mean she could destroy my plants. Sister-in-law got between us and said, "What's done is done." I said, "No way, you're returning everything." Jenny said, "Mom already sold most of them on Marketplace." I lost it and just screamed and screamed at them until Jenny was crying and her mom got in my face and told me I was having a tantrum over plants. I told her to get out of my house and don't ever come anywhere near me or my home again. I called my brother, sister-in-law's husband, and he was shocked and said that they told him I said it was all okay. He brought me the stuff she hadn't sold yet and apologized. I told him I never ever want either of them in the same room as me again. They're horrible, awful, irredeemable people, and I hope they both get karma for what they've done. He told me he gets that I'm upset, but I'm taking it too far, and that family means not holding grudges. I told him to leave, and I cried for the rest of the day. I'm posting because I need to know if my edict is over the top and if I'm overreacting. So, am I the jerk for telling them that they are no longer welcome in my home and not even wanting them in the same room? Not the jerk. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Your sister-in-law knew exactly what she was doing and making a profit of it. I'm surprised your brother didn't realize something was amiss. OP. He said that he noticed they were carrying a lot back home after coming over, but my niece said, Auntie said it was okay, over and over. I just wanted a drill, not a police report. Alright, so a little backstory. This happened about 4 months ago. I had just finished an 11-hour shift and needed to stop at Home Depot to get a new drill. I just wanted to run in, buy it, run out, and get home. Of course, it wasn't that easy. I had just gotten to the drills and was looking over the options in my price range when I hear it. Excuse me, where are the wax toilet rings? There are a few other people in the area, so I ignore it, assuming there's an employee nearby. It's important to add, as I work in traffic control and just got off the job site, I'm wearing high-visibility pants, a high-visibility vest shirt that says company name Traffic Control on the back, a radio with a shoulder mic, and I have a traffic control technician certification card displayed on my vest. The employees here wear orange aprons and normal clothes. Hello? Do you want to do your job or just stand there looking at tools? At this point, I glanced around to see what was going on. I assumed some customer was berating an employee, which happens a lot at this location, unfortunately. I was surprised, however, to see some 30-year-old guy in a white button-down shirt and tie looking at me like I'm stupid. "Can I help you?" I said, still not sure of the situation, but that seemed to tick him off.
"Yes, you. Can you tell me where the darn wax rings are?"
he shouted. At this point, it clicked in my head what was going on. "I'm sorry, sir," I started saying.
I don't want to hear anything but an aisle number,"
he yelled, interrupting me and drawing the attention of a few other shoppers.
"Honestly, how did you get this job being so stupid?"
I tried again. "I don't work," he cuts me off again.
"Oh my god, why is this so hard? Where are the wax rings?"
Now, I don't know why, but I got an idea in my head that I thought would be amusing, and at the very least might get him away from me. I pointed behind him at a random aisle where wax rings almost certainly weren't in, and said, "It's right there."
"Finally! How stupid can you be?"
he yelled, huffing and storming off. I thought that was the end of it. I figured he'd realize they're not in that aisle and then find an actual employee to ask. Nope. He came right back and started yelling that I don't even know how to do my job, and that his best friend is the district manager and he'll have my job. During his yelling, I noticed a few shoppers staring at us. I just raised my hand, pointed to the same aisle as before, and said, "They're right there. Look, can't you see them? How stupid can you be?" I retorted, taking glee and throwing the last part back at him. But he wasn't amused. He smacked my hand down and shoved me, yelling something about stupid punk teenagers. That was a bad idea. I'm not a skilled fighter or super strong or anything, but I know when I can take someone. This guy clearly didn't. I bopped him once in the nose and he fell back, falling on the ground, hard.
"Someone call the police! This guy just attacked me!"
he yelled as the crowd nearby grew larger and larger. I was worried. Obviously, it was in self-defense, but I kept thinking that I should have shoved him back and not bopped him. I was worried that if he had fallen so hard that he had been hurt, I could get in trouble. A manager came over and asked what was going on. He started screaming that,
"This employee attacked me when I tried to ask for simple directions. Look what he did."
By this point, you can see that he's really hurt. "Who did?" the manager said, puzzled and concerned, looking around at the actual employees who were still on their way to the commotion.
"Oh my god, are you all this stupid? Him!"
he screamed, pointing at me. He doesn't work here, sir," the manager said. The manager got on the radio for more employees, ignoring the man's insistence that I do, and tells me to follow him. He takes me to the security office and has me wait for the police. Luckily, multiple customers and the cameras saw my side of the story, and since the police went to the injured person first to render aid, they also interviewed witnesses over there before coming to me. When they came in, I gave my side of the story. The police say it contradicts his version of events and that it matches the witness statements. They said the guy was yelling that he wanted me arrested and locked up. That's when the manager pulled up the footage, which showed him hit my hand and shove me, and I only bopped him after that and one time. Also in my favor, I was facing him with the drill shelf behind me when he shoved me, so I was somewhat cornered. They then asked if I wanted to press charges, and since he wanted to get me arrested, I decided, yeah, lock him up. They arrested him, and a few months later I found out he pled guilty and avoided jail time, but now he has an assault charge on his record. I honestly wouldn't have pressed charges if it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to press charges against me. I hope he learned his lesson and doesn't treat anyone that way again, even if they're a Home Depot employee. Karen demands I clean her apartment. I got her evicted instead. I'm 30, female. My husband has a sister, Anna, who's 29, who lives in an apartment my husband gifted me, with her boyfriend, Rick, and her daughter, who's 9. Anna doesn't work, and Rick has some on and off jobs, and they're always struggling financially. I mention this because my husband sometimes helps them out with money, which is why a couple of days ago, I went to the apartment to drop off some cash. I only intended to drop off the cash and go, as Anna and I don't really know each other, but she opened the door and immediately ushered me inside. Her baby was crying, so she asked me to wait while she tried to get her to sleep. So I waited in the living room with Rick, who was doing some kind of remote work. I could see the apartment was a mess, but as a person who finds it near impossible to keep a room tidy without a baby, I knew I wasn't in a place to judge. That said, I did want to get on with my day, so I was just lingering in the room hoping she'd come back soon. Anna came back after 10 minutes, with the baby still crying, and she said she was going to try feeding her. At this point, Rick complained about the noise because he was working. I told Anna I'd be leaving too, but she started asking questions about depositing the money to a bank. I tried to answer her questions, but really I didn't know all the answers, and said she could call her brother and he could tell her what to do. I could tell she was trying to keep me there, but between the crying and Rick getting annoyed about various things, I just wanted to go. Anna then followed me to the door and asked me if I would mind watching the baby while she showered and maybe tidying up her house a bit. At first, I thought she was joking, but Anna said she was indeed serious. She could use the help. I told her I was definitely not the help, and she needed to tell Rick to do it. She said he was sick of the apartment being a mess, and that she hadn't showered in 2 days, and that I had to do this for her. I told her once again I was not going to clean her house for her, and she demanded a reason, to which I said I didn't owe her one. Rick then came into the hall and said it wasn't like I had a job, I could afford to stay and help. Anna called me an evil, stuck-up gold digger and a few other words that I can't type out, and I eventually left. After I left, I called my husband and told him what had happened, and he was livid. He told Anna she had to vacate the apartment within 3 months and that he would subsidize her moving at the rate he currently was, which means she will have to move to a smaller apartment in a less upmarket area. Anna and Rick have now involved my husband's whole family, who said I could have just helped out for 10 minutes and avoided all of the unpleasantries. My husband is on my side, but I still feel bad that his whole family is giving him grief over this, so I don't know if maybe I do owe them an apology. You're not the jerk. Anna and Rick just exhibited royal jerk entitlement and they deserve to be evicted. It's not enough that they live in your apartment and accept cash handouts, but you're also supposed to do free housekeeping for them? Why would you owe that kind of rudeness and demanding behavior an apology? Not the jerk. And I suspect Rick is a real problem. If Anna doesn't have time to shower for 2 days, it probably means her boyfriend refuses to help with the baby and do chores, but expects a clean house and home-cooked meals. Anna is an adult, but maybe, just maybe, your husband could ask her how this relationship works. Fire me and remind me that I can't work for a competitor? Okay. Many years back, I used to work for a medium-sized private tech company that does work for both government and private organizations in the education market. At the time, the founder was a wonderful guy who fostered a family atmosphere in the company. He treated us like we were his kids, and we loved him like a first, second, or third father, depending on how many fathers each person grew up with. Sadly, as in so many cases, things changed. The owner suffered a near-fatal accident and wasn't able to continue running the company. Everyone was devastated, but his family vowed to keep things going. However, they weren't as business savvy as he was and eventually had to hire someone else to run things. And as leadership changed, I think he went through 3 or 4 CEOs while I was there, the company became more and more corporate. Still, the employees continued on because we still believed in what we were doing. Now, I was a salaried, exempt employee. This was before changes in local labor laws formalized who could and who could not be exempt from overtime. It was generally an 8-to-5 job, but with bursts of unpaid overtime when things got crazy. I loved my manager, who acted like a big brother, and he always had our backs, and I had plenty of friends amongst my coworkers. My job was to handle the technical implementation of one of our bigger and longest-lasting government clients. I knew the system inside and out, and did my best to ensure that the client had their expectations met while trying not to melt our systems. It was interesting work, and I learned a lot about both the tech we used and how the client's operations ran. Eventually, we got a new CEO who brought in their own top-level staff, and this bunch was as micromanagey as you can get. Our manager did his best to shield us, but cracks were starting to form. One by one, they started nitpicking and going after various employees, many of whom had been with the company for years, and my turn had finally come. Came back from lunch a few minutes late with my coworkers because there had been an accident? Noted. HR warned me about watching a video on my computer at work. Sorry, didn't know client presentations were off limits. Walked into the office half an hour late? My carpool buddy, who was pregnant, had morning sickness in the car. Yeah, that wasn't pretty. And just like so many others in this subreddit, they conveniently ignored any unpaid overtime worked throughout the year. Eventually, they built up enough evidence that I was called into a meeting with HR and my manager. When I walked in, I knew it was bad because my manager looked simultaneously outraged and sad. I was told that, due to my numerous infractions, that I was to be terminated immediately. Part of me was expecting this, since it had already happened to several others in much the same way, so I wasn't too surprised. As part of my termination, they reminded me that, per my original employment contract, I was not allowed to work for another company in the same educational technical service field, example, one of our direct competitors, for 5 years. A standard non-compete clause. I could of course work if it wasn't related to education, or, important for later, if it wasn't a private company. This was written back during the original owner's tenure, so it wasn't as strict as other non-compete clauses were. So that was that. My carpool buddy was given permission to leave early, or she wouldn't have had a ride home later, and my service with the company ended. My coworkers were surprised and upset, mostly because the company's reasons weren't that good, but also because the annual updates for my client were due in a few months. I had finished most of the work, but there was still stuff that needed to be done. And you'll probably all call me stupid, but I freely, emphasis on free, made myself available to my coworkers if they needed help. Why? Because I still liked all of them and my manager and didn't want them to suffer due to the actions of upper management. So where's my malicious compliance? Well, I tried to find a new job in a different tech sector, but it was slow going because much of my knowledge was so education focused. However, one of the client managers I used to work with had found employment several years back with, you guessed it, the government client that I had been in charge of. And they just happened to have the perfect job for me, helping to implement a technical system that would replace what they had outsourced to my former employer. And since they aren't a private entity, it didn't violate my non-compete clause. So I was hired, and a few years later, my former employer was informed that their services were no longer needed. I was told by the rest of the implementation team that if it wasn't for all the knowledge I brought with me, it would have taken twice as long to get things done. And my old employer? They're still around. However, after losing roughly 40% of their revenue, they've unfortunately had to downsize quite a bit. I did manage to pull a few of my old coworkers in with me, and the rest found other jobs where they're more appreciated and better paid in many cases. Oh, and I'm salaried, non-exempt. Yay for paid overtime, part of a union, and as a final bonus, my commute is much shorter. Life is good. Break my bumper and try to get me fired? You'll be sorry. This happened yesterday, but is carried over into today. My son is learning to drive, so sometimes I'll finish up at work early and pick him up so that he can drive home. Yesterday, the parking lot was fuller than usual, and this minivan kept driving around looking for a spot. They finally decided to squeeze in between me and the curb, adding up barely 2 inches from my passenger side mirror. Their kid comes out, and this guy starts gesturing at me because obviously there's no way anyone's getting in either of our cars from the passenger sides. He rolls the window down and he motions for me to do the same. The moment I do, he begins to go off on me loudly and very aggressively, saying that I should move from my spot so his kid can get in his car. Keep in mind, I'm in a parking lot, in a small car. He's in this big minivan squeezed into this non-space. I just rolled my window back up and ignored him. Then I feel a thump and look in my rearview mirror to see him walking back to his car. It legit felt like someone ran into me lightly. I didn't dare get out as I'm already a bit intimidated, and dude is obviously a bully after screaming at me to move for the past 5 minutes through a closed window. The guy pulls ahead, his kid gets in, and they leave. I get out of my car and I go around to the back, and I see a massive crack in the bumper of my brand new car right in the center of what looks like a boot print. This is my first new car ever, barely a month into my 2-year lease, and this happens. I get a quote, and it's nearly $4,000 to fix the bumper as it needs to be replaced. It was kicked so hard, it actually broke some clips that held it on too, and this was the recommendation of the dealership as it was very loose. Unfortunately, as a leased car, this has to be fixed ASAP according to my contract. I go back to the school in the hopes that I can get some identifying info on this guy to file a report and recoup costs through their insurance. We can clearly see the front of the van, but not the back where the license plate is because of how he's parked, ironically blocked from view by my car. Fast forward to today. I get to work and my boss calls me into her office. There was a complaint made yesterday about how rude I was and that I was most likely driving under the influence. My boss is awesome. She knows full well there's no way I would do any of that, so she just gives me a heads up and that's it. It's almost 10 a.m. and I just answered a call. It was him, asking if disciplinary action has been taken yet. I interconnected my line to my boss's, so I had a witness, and the conversation was interesting. He had no idea it was me, and I was asking for details from the encounter. He gives them, not realizing I filed a police report the day before that wasn't likely to go anywhere as I had no license plate number or name. So I just got emailed to me the guy's name, address, make, model, year of vehicle, license plate number. I just got off the phone with the police. I don't think he'll be happy to see them on his doorstep. Maybe he should have just been happy with vandalism instead of also trying to get me fired. Entitled people suck. Can't take lunch because of training? I don't think so. In my mid-20s, I worked for a multinational accounting firm. I, female, have always had a real firm policy for standing up when something doesn't sound right, irrelevant if it puts me in an awkward position. This story is how I maliciously complied and in turn made my director learn a lesson I hope she won't forget. We'll call her Karen, not her real name. Background on Karen. When she joined the team, we all liked her. She made great changes and we got on well with her. But the moment she was promoted to director and had direct reporting to the partner, she flipped, became a completely different person, and made our lives horrible. Previously, she spent her career heading up call centers, which was really evident in her management style, and for some reason made it her mission to cut costs in the team and go under budget. This affected everything, from telling us we didn't have a stationary budget for pens and had to take from other team stores, to only allowing a one drink, one course policy on team dinner events. This was a huge company, and all other teams around us would go for fancy, all expenses paid social events, so we felt pretty put out. Her cost cutting also extended to things like no overtime approvals unless way in advance. That didn't last long, as we were understaffed so quickly emergencies weren't even dealt with, and hiring school leavers instead of graduates as they were cheaper, despite the work needing more experience. Her favorite saying to everything was, "It's policy," or blaming HR or higher-ups, saying whatever new thing, even a new irrelevant spreadsheet, would come from HR. Honestly, the amount of time HR spent on our little team in a company with 20,000 plus UK employees was astounding. Then came the day she booked an all-day training session from some external company to show us how to use a new system. She went on about it for weeks, was super excited that she had brought in this new system. The training was intense, so technical, mind-numbing, and most of all, expensive. So what would normally be covered over a few days was crammed into one full day. They were paid hourly. Shock. She sent an email advising how we're expected to attend. It will go through the whole day and lunch would be provided, but it would be a working lunch, so training would also go through lunch. Needless to say, the thought of sitting in a stuffy room for 8 hours without a lunch break wasn't appealing. I asked for an exception as I really relied on going outside for the hour at lunch for a break. I was in the midst of high anxiety at the time and my breaks got me through. She said it's policy, that we would be expected to change our workday around to fit training, and there is no policy that requires her to allow me to go out. If I had an issue, I should check the HR manual. I think until now, this statement usually worked for her as no one ever really checked her. I went one better. I went to HR. Cue malicious compliance. Using the effective wording of, "for my mental health and well-being," HR replied, and of course disagreed as UK law mandates training as work, and an 8-hour day requires at least a 1-hour break, which I am allowed to choose what I do with. They CC'd Karen. Karen backed down, but verbally told me it was an exception for me and to not share with the rest of the team. Of course, I didn't comply. She was breaking the law. So I showed the email chain to everyone as they were complaining about the same thing. So me and the rest of the team came up with a little plan. Sandwiches were delivered, budget sandwiches of course, from the supermarket down the road. Instead of our slightly more expensive internal catering team who caters for this exact type of thing for our 10-floor building. I stood up and announced I was going on lunch and would be back in an hour. Cue the rest of the team, all 12, standing up after me. Karen goes, "Where are you all going?" To which someone replied, "I understand that HR said we were allowed to leave the room for the hour for lunch." The look on her face was priceless. She knew she was stuck. She couldn't say anything. We left her in there alone with the 2 trainers who seemed to guess something was up. I've never felt more satisfied in all of my life. We all had a good laugh about it outside. I think I even did a happy dance. She also knew she couldn't complain to me about it, as that would highlight her breaking the rules. I felt like I was walking on air all day. After this, there was much less blaming of HR, and generally she was a little skittish around me because she knew I didn't take her crap and I would call her out. A second training session had to be booked since the training would never have worked in one day. There were lots of moans and groans about how expensive the extra training session would cost. I left a couple of months afterward, and so did pretty much the rest of my team. Replaced by school leavers, of course, but I'm very glad I complied. I believe Karen still works there, but for a much smaller team. Am I the jerk for telling my dad he hasn't really served our country any more than I have? I'm 22, male. My father is a career soldier. He has been since before I was born. In fact, he served 26 years exactly. I know because he never forgets to tell someone. My family, including my sisters, who are 20 and 18, they were your classic military family. He never deployed overseas, but he does base maintenance stuff. But we still moved a ton. I think the longest we spent in one place, between when I was born and when I turned 18, was 2.5 years. My dad was always insistent that whether or not it was in uniform, that we serve our country, though he was never clear on what exactly that meant. My older sister is going to school to be a labor and delivery nurse. That counts according to him. My youngest sister joined the Navy the day she turned 18. That obviously counts to him. I decided to become an electrician. That doesn't count according to him. When I was 18 and told him, he wouldn't pay for my trade school. He paid for nursing school for my sister. And he didn't let me move in with the family when it came time to do that a year later. I was able to get an apprenticeship with an older cousin of mine, and that's what I'm doing right now. My dad told me to my face how disappointed he was when I told him what I wanted to do. And to this day, while he'll say that he's proud of me, he always prefaces it with, "Even though I'm disappointed you never decided to serve our country." I don't really care for him these days, but I still fly out at least twice a year to see my mom and sisters, who are all supportive. I was over there last month to visit, and he started telling me it was never too late to enlist, and that the military still needs electricians, and I was sick of his crap. I told him I've done as much for our country as him. All he's ever done is be a mechanic who knows how to shoot. I'm sick of him acting like he's special. He kicked me out, so I went home early. My mom and sisters don't blame me for finally snapping, but they think I went too far to imply he hasn't sacrificed for our country. I'm still not sure if I was wrong to lose it like that, but I was sick of him. Not the jerk. These military types are so proud of their sacrifice, but they never think of the burden on their family. You served your country by being uprooted time and time again during your formative years, when most kids crave stability and a circle of friends. Not the jerk for having had enough. Not the jerk for getting a job that's still very much in demand, even as a civilian. Not the jerk for calling him out. He had it coming. This. Military parents make sacrifices for the country, but their kids are forced to make sacrifices. Not the jerk. Not for the country, just for the politicians. He should have served the country by working for the Parks and Recreation Department. Not the jerk. I hope someday serving your country will come to mean contributing something useful or essential to society. I hate it when the military is glorified so much to the point that it's considered superior to everything else. Not the jerk. Tell your dad that anyone with half a brain cell knows that the military is only for people who have no other choice. Tell him that good, actual parents are disappointed in their kids when they make the decision to throw their life away by oh, you can just shut up, you're crazy, dude. Am I the jerk for wanting to drive the family instead of my wife? Since we were married, my wife always wanted to drive when we go places together, and now as a family. She originally said that she got car sick, so I went with it for a long time, even though it made me feel uncomfortable. It's been bothering me more and more lately, especially when we're at social events and everyone's leaving and I'm sitting in the passenger seat waving bye to everyone, getting into their cars, feeling like a kid. I brought it up in a marriage counseling session recently. This is more of a maintenance type thing that we've been doing for a long time, and our counselor recommended that she give me a chance driving. She wasn't happy at all, but she agreed to try it out. Every time I've driven, now she's been extremely bitter. She'll sit in the passenger seat stewing away in anger. One-word responses, very cold. She mentioned that this is the one thing that I can control, and now I don't have that. Funny enough, she didn't mention car sickness at all. It's been 5 or 6 times now that we've done this. Each time I bring it up, she gets upset. She won't refuse, but she will be miserable. I'm not going to lie. My reasoning for wanting to drive is that I believe the husband should. It's embarrassing for me when others see me sitting in the passenger seat being driven by my wife. When I started driving, my daughter even asked me why I was driving. When I responded, "Daddies drive too," she responded with, "But you don't." Her reasoning is that she gets car sick, but hasn't complained about it once since being in the passenger seat, and that she loses some sort of control. She has stated that she hates that our counselor gave that suggestion. Am I the jerk for wanting to be the driver when we go places as a family? Should I just let her drive and deal with it, even though it makes me feel uncomfortable and a bit disrespected as a husband? Thanks. You're the jerk. I'm laughing at you for being more concerned about your ego and being insecure over driving than your wife's well-being. She said car sickness and being in control. That should raise some red flags for you. Why doesn't she feel in control of other things? Are you traditional in other ways? I'm curious about something. Does your wife work? Also, did he ever think he might just be a bad driver? You're the jerk. She has an actual physiological issue when you drive, and you have an ego issue when she drives. You're the problem here. She'll sit in the passenger seat stewing away in anger? She's sitting there feeling sick to her stomach. Were you expecting her to be happy? You're the jerk. What kind of weird crap is this? Did you actually tell your therapist why not driving bothers you? I feel like they wouldn't be entertaining this if you did. I take it you've never been motion sick before. You aren't usually in a talkative and happy mood while nursing a headache and trying not to throw up. Would I be the jerk for not returning a $1,000 gift given to me by my coworkers for my baby? In December of 2019, I told my boss that I'd be quitting in January of 2020 to be self-employed. But boss asks me to stay on payroll so he can contract out work to me easily. On my last day, coworkers leave me a goodbye card with $1,000 cash in it. March 2020, I move a few hours away. Last week, March 2023, I see a former coworker who pats my stomach and asks me if this is my second. I internally freak out because, oh no, she thinks I'm pregnant. I know I'm 20 pounds over where I'd like to be, and a lot of that is on my gut, coupled with a super curved lower spine that made my belly stick out. I tell coworker I don't have any kids, I'm just big. She looks awkward. I feel awkward. 0 of 10 experience, would not repeat. This morning, I get a call from HR passing on a message from a different coworker asking for the going away cash to be returned, as it was meant as a maternity gift for my baby, and that me being big and wearing shirts that emphasize my belly was deceptive, and I tricked that coworker into thinking I was pregnant. HR says she overheard the conversation about me leaving, but continuing to do some work in the coming months, and took that as my maternity leave. She took donations from the staff under the pretense, and now my size and lack of having a baby is the hot office gossip. Feeling super great about that too. HR says they can't force me to do anything, but it would be nice to return it. Here's the thing, I no longer have the card, but I'm sure it did not say anything about, there's a kid inside of you. It had 2 pandas on the front that, oh, now as I'm typing, I do remember there was a big one hugging a smaller one, so maybe it was about babies. But it definitely didn't say anything like, bun in the oven, or we think you're pregnant. I'm certain I would remember that because that's a super big insecurity I've had for the past 5 years since I started gaining weight. Medicine side effect. And husband keeps saying, nobody thinks you look pregnant. So, sucks to be wrong, hubby. This is a very hollow victory. I'm feeling crushed and upset that the going away gift actually wasn't, and not once did any of my coworkers actually ask if I was pregnant. I don't really want to return the money. The cash is long since gone, but I could pull $1,000 from my bank to give back. Old boss has also been emailed about this entire exchange, posting here while I wait for a reply from him and Googling women's fashion to hide the belly, and feeling horrible. OMG, not the jerk. This is harassment. Their mistake in giving you a gift that they never said was for your baby is not your issue to correct. It was 100% reasonable for you to think that it was a goodbye gift. They don't get to decide, goodbye because I'm having a baby is somehow more worthy than goodbye, I'm leaving to start my own thing. I would ignore HR or tell them what you wrote here. It was a gift, freely given, not coerced from them, with absolutely no mention of it being conditional upon it going towards a baby. Then block them all. Karen boss refuses my request for time off, so I quit. A few years ago, my husband was laid off at the start of summer. I had a part-time gig as a teacher, but it didn't come with benefits. I had to take a job, any job, to provide health insurance, America, while hubby looked for a new job. I got a job as a teller at a bank. I tried, but was new to keeping a till, so a few times a week, my register would imbalance. Never very much money, under a few dollars. but the whole staff had to stay late until we straightened it out. I felt horrible for the rest of the staff. As if that shame wasn't bad enough, my supervisor, Mel, would remind me that I worked at will and they could fire me at any time. Our family's health insurance going up in smoke was terrifying to me. Sometimes it was hard to hold back tears. I got better as the summer went on, but every few weeks, if I would make a mistake, Mel would smile as she warned me that
You can be fired for no cause, and you'd have to leave immediately.
it was so fantastically over the top. At one point, I pointed out that constant threats didn't create a healthy environment. Her smile only broadened.
It goes both ways. You can quit at any time, you know.
When the school year started in the fall, I needed to take my daughter to tour her new school for her first day. I asked to take my lunch in the afternoon so I could help my daughter. Though they approved it, when it came time for my lunch, they insisted I work through my lunch because they were being slammed. By then, hubby had found another job with insurance, and, even better, I'd been offered more hours teaching, though still not full-time. It was enough. The next day, I practically floated into the bank. I waited until 10 a.m., then told Mel I needed to talk with her. She replied that she was very busy and it would have to wait until after we closed. "Oh, I won't be here then," I said. She looked shocked.
What?
I smiled. "Remember that I needed to bring my daughter to her new school yesterday? You wouldn't let me do that, so I'm doing it this afternoon." She didn't get it at all.
You can't just take an hour off when you...
I had to interrupt. "I'm not taking an hour off. I'm leaving, for good, at noon. You kept reminding me that I work at will. Thanks for those reminders. I'm leaving for good in 2 hours." While Mel fumed, I waited on customers. I practically sang my greetings to them and was so cheerful, customers kept asking me why I was so happy. I was delighted to tell them, because I'm leaving forever at noon. After a half hour of that, Mel thought I should just go right away, and I did. I skipped right out that door, then gave Mel a very elaborate curtsy at the door. Husband left me locked out for 45 minutes while he played Elden Ring. My husband and I currently live in an apartment that requires a key fob to get into the building, then a regular key for the apartment. Over the weekend, my fob stopped working, and for some reason, the office is dragging their feet replacing it. Office is closed weekends, so I called Monday to ask for a replacement. My husband's fob is fine, so we're using that in the meantime. I get off work 2 hours after he does, so he keeps the fob, and we agreed that he'll make sure he's at the apartment when I get home so he can let me into the building. I call him when I'm leaving work to give him a heads up that I'll be at the apartment in 15 minutes. I leave work at the same time every day and have for the last 4 years, 5 p.m. Today I left work, called my husband, no answer. I send him a text message, "Hey, I'm on my way home." I call him 2 more times on my drive home, no answer. I arrive at the apartment and his truck is in the lot, so I know he's home. I stand in the entrance lobby and call him over and over, no answer. But I ended up locked out for 45 minutes before another tenant was leaving and let me into the building. I get up to the apartment and my husband is playing Elden Ring on our PlayStation with his headphones on. Apparently he bought it today. I walk over, tap him on his shoulder, visibly upset. He gets that, "Oh no, I messed up" look on his face and rips his headphones off. I calmly ask him, "What on earth, dude?" He tells me he lost track of time, totally forgot, etc. His phone was on silent and across the room from him, thus why he didn't answer the calls. I was upset and I wanted to avoid raising my voice or causing a blowout, so I just tell him that was a jerk move. Take the fob off his keychain and leave it to go visit my sister, which is where I am currently. My husband is texting me, essentially saying I'm the jerk for taking the fob, which means he can't leave the building without getting locked out. I pointed out to him that he left me locked out for 45 minutes and that he's at home with his game and that as far as I know, he had no plans to leave the apartment from what he had told me. My sister finds this all hilarious, but does think maybe I was a little too harsh taking the fob when I left. Personally, I feel I was not the jerk as I have no issue with him gaming. I game myself. I have issue that he left me locked out and standing in the lobby for 45 minutes because he wasn't paying attention. Am I the jerk? Info: I didn't take the fob to punish him. I took the fob as he was still gaming when I left for my sister's, so I took it in the event he became distracted and left me locked out again. or in case I stayed late hanging out with my sister and he fell asleep. Info 2. Was advised to add this. My sister is 5 minutes down the road from where we live. I took off the fob in front of him, told him when I'd be home, and texted him when I got to my sister's. I'm not an hour away. In the event of an emergency, I can be home ASAP. Keep the fob. Your husband can find an imbued sword key to let himself in and out. Not the jerk. My husband, when I showed him this comment, I lost 17,000 runes to one of those earlier. Not sure he took the right lesson. Not the jerk. You are also leaving, so why wouldn't you have taken the key fob? Seriously, I don't understand why people are saying she's punishing him. He clearly has no intentions of leaving the apartment. Why would she not bring it with her? Not the jerk. I would be livid. It was a genuine mistake, so as long as you're not planning on being away with the fob overnight or anything, you're fine. But taking it to go for a visit to ensure you can get back in later when he's just on the couch gaming is perfectly reasonable. Karen keeps eating my microwave dinners, and I've had enough. About 6 weeks ago, I, 21 female, moved in with my friend John, who's 22 male. John and I have been very good friends for almost 2 years now after I befriended him at work. 6 months ago, he met this girl, Kat, who's 19. He told me about her the day after he matched with her on a dating app and took me to her workplace to meet her. She seemed very lovely, and I was so happy for him. Since then, John is always inviting her to every friend outing, so I got to know her. We have lots in common, and for John's sake, I wanted to be her friend. However, I think that, in the nicest way possible, she's a bit rude. She does art, and half the time John compliments her work, she says, "You hate it, don't you?" Or times we hang out with other friends, we've had to go home early as she was bored, and John was our ride home. She hasn't done anything to me personally, but I just don't like her much. I'm happy John has found someone who he cares for, but having to stand by and watch how she acts sometimes rubs me the wrong way. Here's where the issue comes in. Yesterday, John and I were at the supermarket to do our food shop. Normally, we would buy our food for the week, and maybe a couple of simple or frozen meals to save for Sunday. However, Kat has been coming over for dinners a few times a week, and she has a very limited diet. She refuses to eat anything other than fast food or simple or frozen meals. She likely has her reasons for eating specific food, and in case it's due to an ED or something similar, I don't want to make things hard for her or pry into something that isn't my business. The time where it became an issue for me is how John has now wanted to buy backup meals for her in case she doesn't like what we're cooking. This would make sense, as before she has been eating stuff that was part of our weekly meal plan. The problem is, John wants me to financially contribute to these extra meals for her. When I spoke to John about this and said how I'm not happy paying half for her meals, our weekly shop cost is just split in half as we both eat everything, he got quite agitated. He called me selfish for not wanting to help her just to save money. I know frozen meals aren't the most expensive thing in the world, but John is in a much better financial situation than I am. And while I can pay my share of the bills and occasionally have outings with my friends, I don't want to be dishing out extra money for meals for a girl I have no real connection to, as these small amounts do add up. In my eyes, if Kat doesn't like what we're cooking, she could come over on a different day, or John could buy backup meals for her out of his own pocket. I feel like a jerk, but I don't think I should be paying for an extra person's food. If my boyfriend had a similar situation to Kat, I'd see it as my responsibility to provide for him and his diet, and I'd never expect John to pay. Am I the jerk for thinking this way? Do any of you have any advice? Not the jerk, but it's time to take a financial and social step back from John as he navigates his new relationship. He can't expect you to help finance the fact that his girlfriend eats like a kid and needs backup meals. That's their expense alone, and perhaps separate shopping is now in order as you two no longer have the same joint priorities. On the flip side, I also wouldn't continue to rely on John as a ride if you constantly want to stay out with friends later. It honestly sounds like your life paths are just splitting at this time, and it's best to acknowledge that and adjust expectations of each other accordingly before bitterness sets in. I'd also get ahead of any rent or living concerns sooner rather than later. If she's sticking around, it may be time to start planning an exit strategy. Nanny bought books for my daughter and expects me to pay her for them. My daughter Ruby is 12. Recently, she's gotten into the original Star Trek show, as well as The Next Generation. Ruby is also a big reader and has started to collect a few of the old Star Trek books that she finds in used bookstores and thrift stores. These books usually cost anywhere from 50 cents to a couple of dollars. My nanny, Tessa, who's 22, hangs out with Ruby most days after she gets out of school. Tessa has been our nanny for over a year now, and she and Ruby get along great. Tessa is big into thrifting and will often keep an eye out for the books that Ruby wants. This is not typically a problem, and Ruby always pays Tessa back for the books using her allowance. The problem occurred when Tessa went on a family vacation out west. Apparently, she went thrifting during this trip, found some books for Ruby. She texted Ruby asking her if she wanted the books, and Ruby said yes. Well, Tessa returned yesterday with a stack of about 35 books and told Ruby they cost $50. Ruby doesn't have this much money and told Tessa. Tessa then asked me if I would cover the cost. I said no, as Tessa had never even asked me about buying Ruby the books, nor was I aware of the conversation between the two of them. Tessa got upset, and I asked Ruby to show me the text, which made no mention of price or even the amount of books she was buying. Tessa only said that she found some books for Ruby. Ruby is on the spectrum and does not read between the lines. You have to be very literal with her. Previously, Tessa has never bought Ruby more than 1 or 2 books at a time, so I told her that she should have clarified with Ruby regarding the amount, or double-checked with me before purchasing, and that I would not be paying the $50. Tessa said she could not return the books because they came from the thrift store. I stood firm in my decision and reiterated that she should have asked me first. Tessa left, and Ruby is very upset. I know Tessa is a student and does not have a ton of money, so am I the jerk for not paying Tessa for the books? Edit, because some people are asking. I am a single parent to Ruby, and while $50 will not make or break the bank, it is definitely an unexpected expense. I provide Tessa with an extra amount of money each month to spend on whatever she wants to do with Ruby, movies, the mall, etc. If she wanted to spend this fund on books for Ruby, that would have been totally fine, but she had already used it up. Edit 2. I definitely didn't expect this post to blow up overnight, so I'm going to add a bit more context. For those of you who are asking how can I afford a nanny for Ruby and still have $50 be a large unexpected expense, I do not pay for Tessa's services. Because Ruby is on the spectrum, she is entitled to benefits from our state, including care. The agency I work with pays Tessa. I'm not involved in that process at all. Update. I appreciate everyone's input. I've seen a few comments hinting to me about the fact that I don't support my daughter's reading habit. Please know this is definitely not the case. We're both big readers and frequent patrons of our local library. I'm always supportive of Ruby getting new books. I talked to Tessa and told her that I appreciate her for thinking of Ruby, apologized for the misunderstanding, and I have paid her for the books. We had a chat about expectations in the future, and I don't think this will happen again. I've also talked to Ruby, and we agreed that I would hold on to the books and she would pay me for them as she wishes. It's important to me that Ruby learns how to handle her finances appropriately, and we've decided that she will get 2 new books every week. She reads very quickly. After reading through your perspectives on the matter, I agree that it is better in the long run to lose the money and salvage the relationship between the 3 of us, and had not considered all of the implications of doing otherwise. Lesson learned. Sometimes it's better to salvage an important relationship than to be right. Pay for the books. Let Tessa know that you can't do so in the future though, without talking about it. Tell her how much you appreciate her thoughtfulness, now and always. Daughter keeps using Do Not Disturb on her phone to ignore us. My daughter, who's 16, has her phone on Do Not Disturb all of the time. At first, it wasn't an issue since she would still answer my texts and calls whenever she is out at practice. For the past few weeks, she stopped answering my texts and calls, and she wouldn't receive them since I'd ask her why she wasn't answering and she'd claimed that she didn't get them. I'm not stupid. Her phone is on Do Not Disturb, and none of my texts and calls are going through. I'd ask my other daughters to see if they can reach out to her whenever she is out, just to ask her what time she might be home. No answers. My oldest, who's 22, would try to call, text, FaceTime, you name it, in order to ask her when she might be home. Over the weekend, my daughter had to attend an event at school, and when I came to pick her up, she went MIA and wasn't answering any of my texts and calls since, again, the Do Not Disturb feature was on. I started to get frustrated over it, so when my daughter finally entered the car, I told her that she needs to start answering my calls and texts, and she had no reason to ignore me when she knew I was going to be picking her up. My daughter gave me the excuse of, "Oh, I didn't see it," again. My frustration turned into anger, so I start yelling at her and said, "None of us are able to easily get a hold of you. Something that normally takes 2 minutes takes 20 or more since we can't seem to get you to answer the phone. Your father and I have been worried sick whenever you don't answer the phone." I then told her she has 2 choices. Either she removes the Do Not Disturb on her phone, or it gets taken away for a week. My daughter rolls her eyes and said it isn't fair for her to not be allowed to have the Do Not Disturb feature on. I said she needs to start answering her phone, or at the very least call us back right away. I said that if she doesn't comply, her phone will be taken away. She begged me not to take her phone, so I said she needs to remove the Do Not Disturb feature. She refused once again. When we got home, I told her if she doesn't want her phone to be taken away, she needs to remove the Do Not Disturb feature. After some back and forth, my daughter removes the feature right in front of me before running to her room in tears. Now, before anyone thinks otherwise, I did allow her to have the phone on Do Not Disturb as long as she answers our calls and texts. We'd have to call her more than once to get a hold of her, but she is completely unreachable. I think I was too harsh, but I was at my wit's end. Am I the jerk? Edit. Some of you are thinking that I'm spamming my daughter with phone calls and texts while she's at school. I do not message her during school hours. The issue is taking place after school or on the weekends. My daughter, most of the time, does not tell anyone where she's going, doesn't ask for permission when she wants to go out with friends, and would sneak out of the house every time her father and I are out. None of my other kids would have any knowledge of where she went, and they'd even asked her, but she wouldn't answer her phone. Sometimes my son will ask her if she could buy him something from McDonald's or if they can go to Target together. We did speak to her before and said she can keep her phone on Do Not Disturb, and we would never call or text while she's in class. Edit 2. My daughter has also been lying to us about where she'd go. She'd ask to borrow the car to go get food, but would come home 2 hours later. I'd call her after 45 minutes, but the phone would go straight to voicemail. She normally does tell us if she's going to class or practice, but whenever she goes out outside of those times, she doesn't tell us, she won't answer her phone. It's like she's hiding. Edit 3. Some are suggesting that I take the car keys away. The problem with that is, if there's a car available, she'll take it. She's taken my oldest daughter's car a few times, and when she'd ask where she's going, she would say, "None of your business." My oldest hid the car keys from her, and it would be met with manipulation and my daughter crying and screaming. Edit 4. As stated in the first edit, we do not text or call our daughter during school. My daughter takes the car when my husband and I are not here. If there's no car available, she won't go. My daughter is on spring break this week, and I've spoken to her this morning, and I've taken her car keys. She will not have it back for a long time is all I'm going to say. Not until my husband and I are able to trust her again. My husband and I will have a serious sit down with her when he gets off from work this afternoon. Not the jerk. A teenager has the phone to be contacted. If she can't use it for its intended function, she doesn't need it. The Do Not Disturb function can be set up such that a priority contact will go right through it. She's choosing not to. Not the jerk. As a parent, this is infuriating. My kids used to do it. There are situations where the Do Not Disturb function is perfectly acceptable and it has its place. But you're paying the bill for that phone. She has a phone out of your kindness as a parent, and she has no right to have a phone. You have every right to insist she takes it off Do Not Disturb. Edit. Wow, so many you're the jerks. Parents get phones for their kid to have some independence and to connect to the world. This parent was not overbearing and spamming the kid with phone calls. When a parent needs to reach their kid, they should be able to reach them. If they miss a text or a call, it's understandable. It happens. This kid was never answering. Repeat, never. The price the kid pays to have the phone is simply be accessible. They get all the benefits of being connected to the entire world, their friends, their entire family, the internet, social media, apps, games, all for the low price of $0 and responding to mom and dad when they call or text. Totally fair. You're the jerk. You have a teenager who's hiding something from you, sneaking out, stealing cars, and you're focused on her not answering the phone? I'm all for teenage independence, but this is way too far. Sort out your kid. I'm going against the grain, but you're the jerk. Not for forcing her to turn off the Do Not Disturb feature on her phone, but for letting her think the way that she's acting is okay. Your 16-year-old daughter doesn't think it's necessary to let you guys know where she's going. She sneaks out of the house any given chance, and she steals people's cars. She's not borrowing someone's car, she's stealing. And you're teaching her that she can get away with it. You're threatening her with taking her phone away? It should have been taken away a long time ago. You say you can't take the car keys away from her because she'll just steal whoever else's car is there? So you shouldn't even bother coming up with a solution? You're raising a kid that's going to be horrendous to deal with in the real world, someone who doesn't respect boundaries and can't follow rules. This is far beyond the scope of Reddit. She might need to see a therapist, but in reality, it sounds like you guys aren't enforcing boundaries and your daughter has realized she can step all over you. Some kids need a strict parent, and your daughter sounds like one of them. Kids nowadays are becoming a horror to deal with, especially in schools, because parents like you allow them to run the household. Put your foot down. She's your kid and you're the parent. Stop letting her put herself at risk, because one day she's going to make a mistake she can't come back from. Am I the jerk for giving away an expensive KitchenAid stand mixer my dad got me for my birthday that I thought looked extremely ugly? Background. For my 24th birthday, my dad got me a gray metal KitchenAid stand mixer for my apartment. It was about $700, I think. However, I did not ask for this, and honestly, I hate the color as it doesn't match anything in my place, and also it's too big. I gave it to my friend who liked it and was moving to a different state. My boyfriend then got me a cute black stand mixer that fits into my apartment a lot better, so that's what I have. My dad was over last night and he noticed that the gray stand mixer was gone and replaced by the black one. He asked where it was and I told him the truth, namely that I thought the gray one was ugly, so I gave it to my friend and my boyfriend got me the black one instead. My dad was shocked and said the gray stand mixer had cost a lot and that he thought I would have liked it, so that's why he gave it to me as a present. Maybe here's where I'm the jerk. I said if he would have been more observant, he would have known that I absolutely hate the color gray. It's my least favorite color, and everyone in my life who knows me knows that. I honestly wasn't trying to be rude, I was just stating a fact. But my mom called me today and told me I really hurt my dad's feelings and I need to apologize for throwing away a thoughtful birthday gift my dad had put a lot of money and thought into. I don't think that's necessary. I think after my dad gave me the stand mixer, it became mine and I could do anything with it. And I didn't throw it away. I gave it to a friend. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Once you've given someone a gift, they don't get to claim ownership of that item anymore. A gift is given away, and that's kind of it. It's totally up to the receiver what they then do with it. Or at least that's how I treat gifts. Once it's gone from my responsibility of getting it to its receiver, then that's it. My job is done, and I don't care what happens to it. The money is gone from my pocket and I move on. Whether someone likes my gift or not, I don't really care. Like, I try to make them as thoughtful as possible, but ultimately, I did my best, and that will have to do. Gifts aren't meant to be a way to control someone else or their actions. Gifts are meant to be gifted and enjoyed if possible. Sometimes the gifts we receive aren't that great, and we re-gift them or sell them or ask to get the monetary value of the gift, hence a gift receipt. I wonder if this whole thing has a lot less to do with the mixer itself and more to do with the fact that your dad maybe doesn't know anything about you or your living situation, or maybe doesn't listen to you when you talk about these things. Like with a high-value item like that, I would normally ask the person their favorite color or needs, or ask them to pick the one that they want because everyone has different needs, aesthetics, preferences, and availability. It's an awkward situation because it is a high-value item, and tons of people, including myself, would love to have one, but ultimately it's gone to a good home. OP has a mixer they like, and the dad still gave a very nice gift, and that effort doesn't mean nothing just because OP doesn't like it. I'm sure the effort put in is appreciated. I guess OP is just kind of fed up with the thoughtlessness of their dad not even asking them what they want, which is kind of valid because furnishing a home is very much a personal thing. It's a part of your personal space, so I get where OP is coming from. I don't think the dad is a jerk either. I just think everyone here has to communicate more effectively. OP would be better to let their dad know that the mixer wasn't for them, but they appreciate the effort. Am I the jerk for not doing anything hostessy for my in-laws' visit, given I'm 3 weeks postpartum? My husband's family lives on the other side of the country. We had our first kid at the height of lockdown, so my husband's parents, sister, and her family did not meet him in person until his first birthday. I just delivered our second 2 weeks ago, and my husband's family, 4 adults and 3 kids, asked if they could all visit during spring break to see the baby, which is the end of next week. I said okay. Although the 7 of them would be staying at an Airbnb, I know they will be spending all day every day at our home to see the kids. I told my husband to make sure they know we will be ordering in every meal, and beyond eggs and cereal and some drinks and snacks like chips and fruit, I wasn't planning to get much else. I'm also tired and up with the baby all night, And I'm exhausted at the very thought of 7 people being in my house every day for a week while I'm trying to nurse and rest and manage a toddler's big emotions around a new sibling. His response was, "Well, we're going to need X and Y for my parents and X for the kids, and I was thinking one day I can make X." And he started describing needing to get the best bread and the best cheese, all of which involves trips to numerous stores. He even said he was going to ask my dad, who occasionally buys us some specialty grocery stuff that I ask for and drops it off, to pick up a bunch of items for them. At this point, I got really mad. I said, "I'm not trying to go above and beyond here and play host while I'm 3 weeks postpartum. They can eat the stuff from the grocery store, even if it's not the best, and deal for 5 days. He told me I sound spiteful. I was also frustrated because when his family visits, my husband checks out and just plays with his nephews and chats for hours with his brother-in-law. And I know I'm going to be the one setting out snacks, tidying up, etc. He seems more concerned with his family having fun, the visit being a good time, and with them being comfortable, than with me getting what I need. I feel like it doesn't matter what I ask for. He isn't going to have my back, so I have to protect myself and my own well-being." We got into a big fight about it. I yelled at him, and I'm not really talking to him right now. They show up next week, and I'm feeling a lot of anger and resentment about it. So, am I the jerk for not lifting a finger for my visitors? Not the jerk. OMG, they should be helping you. Not the jerk. Tell him division of labor is that you take care of the baby and he takes care of the house and guests. If he refuses, offer to switch. He can do all the feeding and changing and lose sleep every night. No? Then he can take care of the house and the guests. Not the jerk. If your husband wants to have his family entertained, then he has to entertain them. That means cooking for them, serving them, and cleaning up after them. Am I the jerk for kicking my son out for how he treated his mom? I, 53 female, and my wife, Abby, who's 50 female, have been together for over 30 years and married for 20. We adopted our son, Jack, when he was a toddler after his parents had passed. He's now 20. Bringing him up wasn't without its difficulties, but in all, he was a good kid. Good grades, good judgment, didn't cause trouble on purpose. He always loved spending time with us, watching TV with us, and in his teen years, he even began cooking with us and became somewhat of a Gordon Ramsay. I noticed things changed a bit after we adopted our daughter at the age of 7, Sam. He was 15. She was a troubled kid, bounced around a lot in the foster care system. For a while, he loved her and really enjoyed being around her and showing her that this house was safe, which was basically all the things my wife and I were trying to do. I wanted to be clear that we never asked him to be a parent. That was our job. He always offered to do things with her and would often choose to be around her rather than his friends. He never had to babysit her, but he did on occasion during small emergencies. He seemed slightly annoyed with her, but always told us that it was just a bit frustrating to deal with her sometimes. For info, when I say Sam was troubled, I mean she'd hide food, hide herself, and shut down a lot. There was no violence or anger. We still deal with the echoes of some of this today. We do have her in therapy to this day, and she's much better. Soon after his 19th birthday, he met a girl who was 18 at the time, and his personality began to change. He grew resentful of us, of Sam. He'd make these weird or hostile comments towards Abby or me, and occasionally I'd catch him telling Sam about her biological family. I'd always try to shut it down, but he'd make some excuse and go home when I tried to talk to him. I don't want Sam getting into contact with her family. It's a toxic family that was no good and very dangerous. Earlier today, me and the wife were speaking to him about his behavior, and he said that his girlfriend told us that we kept him from his family on purpose during his entire upbringing, and that adoption was a bad experience that tears families apart. This stunned us since we were always as transparent as we could be. What remained of his family didn't want to talk to him, and that's why we adopted him. My wife tried to explain that we never tried to do that. He called her a lying jerk and told her to shut up, and that we are baby snatchers. Immediately, I cut in and told him to leave and not come back unless it's to apologize. He left, saying that he hoped one day Sam wisened up to us lying about her family as well, that we were awful for ripping her away from her real family. I don't understand his logic, but he was clearly upset at us for what we did. I wish I hadn't kicked him out so we could have talked it through, but he was just throwing mistreatment to us, the ones who actually cared for him for most of his life, and I couldn't watch it. Am I the jerk? Nope, not the jerk. It sounds like you've been saying and doing all the right things where both kids are concerned. Also, by age 20, he should have much better control over his actions and words. He had no right to talk to you like this. By the age of 6, I knew better than to talk to my parents that way. I don't think you should backtrack at all on the ultimatum. If he gets in touch, you can be relieved or happy, etc., but stay firm on your rule. He still has to apologize, and it has to be heartfelt. No throwaway stuff like, all right, I'm sorry. He needs to know why he's sorry, and the apology should reflect this. Also, something else might be going on with him. Not an excuse, but maybe an explanation. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter she can't move 1,000 miles away to live with her girlfriend? I, 46 female, am the mother to 2 wonderful kids, Andrew, who's 16, and Nicole, who's 21. Nicole was very bright as a kid and excelled in her classes, and she headed into college with a plan to get a master's at least. I never had to worry about her doing well or hitting milestones, but the last few years have been very surprising. She became a bit withdrawn in her teen years, more so than I realized until now, and after her first year of college, she suddenly moved out from a relative's home and got her own apartment. Then after her second year of college, last May, she told me and her father, who's 58, that she was dropping out and might return in a year, but wasn't sure, and that she was incredibly stressed and depressed and had been for years. It felt like it was coming out of nowhere. Last fall, she got a full-time job and started talking about how she was happy and finally in a good routine and that she loved working. I was glad things were at least going well for her now, but still hoping she'd return to college soon. One of the biggest recent bombshells she dropped on me, though, was a month ago when I drove to visit her. We went out for lunch and we started talking about this friend, 25 female, of hers. Eventually, my daughter admitted to me that she and this girl had been dating since January and that she flew to meet her without even telling me or her father. Mind you, she flew over 1,000 miles to see this girl that she had never even met and had only called and video chatted with for a few months. I was shocked and angry, but all I did was gently scold her for not telling me and that I'm glad she's okay and that she had a good time with her girlfriend. I'm very new to this whole thing with my daughter, but I'm willing to support her because I love her. The problem now is that she told me earlier this week that she intends to move within the next year and a half. She says it may be sooner rather than later because things are changing with her girlfriend's living situation and she wanted to give me a heads up. I told her absolutely not, that she can't move in with someone she's only been dating for a couple of months, especially not when she's moving several states away. All of her family is here, including me and her father and her brother and her 3 living grandparents. I told her she's too young and she can't move that far away from us just for a girl. She told me that regardless of her girlfriend, she's been wanting to move away for years and that her girlfriend's state was on a list of potential places. She said she loved being there when she visited and can't wait to go back. She says I'm being unreasonable by asking her to stay and that she hates it here and feels like she can't be herself. Am I the jerk here? I don't think she's old enough or mature enough to leave. Edit because someone asked. My daughter didn't ask for money. She almost never asks for money. She's like her father in that way. She's almost completely financially independent. I have her on my health and dental insurance to help her out. My mother pays for her monthly phone plan because she insisted on doing something for my daughter. And my daughter's grandfather on her father's side pays her car insurance. And my daughter goes to her father when she has car troubles because he has a lot of experience with cars. My daughter takes care of all of her other needs on her own. You're the jerk. It seems like you don't know much about your daughter's personal life, and that's okay because she doesn't need to share. She's not a teen living under your roof. The more you butt in and tell her what she can and can't do as an adult, the less you're going to see her. Have you considered that the reason she wants to leave at all is to get away from the restraints of her hometown and family? You're the jerk. She's an adult, and she has respected you enough to tell you. It's a shame that you weren't close enough to get to see that she was depressed when you thought she was all good, but keeping her close won't make up for that. Fully embrace and support her because it sounds like she's happy. Stay on her good side and hopefully she'll bring you along in her new life. My Karen stepdaughter scammed me for $10,000. Fake names for privacy. I have 3 kids, Bea, 23 female, Amy, 20 female, and Liz, 15 female. Bea is technically my stepdaughter, and I only mention it because it's relevant to the story. My husband Ben and I have a deal with our kids that as long as they are studying, we will pay for all their expenses, and they may be at home rent-free. If they feel that college isn't for them, then they need to get a job. We feel it's their life and their choice, but Ben and I won't enable them to do nothing. Amy is earning a degree, and Liz is still in high school. Bea told us that college wasn't for her. We said okay and helped her apply for jobs. She got hired as a receptionist, but only works part-time. We just asked that she pitch in for groceries, under $75 a month, and help with chores. She was not charged for her room or for water or electric bills. We also paid for her car and its insurance. Bea only had to pay for gas. She also has all of her essentials, soap, toothpaste, etc., provided by us. She needs to follow the house rules. Be kind and respectful to every member of the house. You may stay up past 10 p.m., but must be quiet since other people have work or school. Turn off devices you aren't using to conserve electricity and improve the Wi-Fi. We don't approve of smoking, but if you're going to do it, you have to do it outside and dispose of it properly, etc. Ben and I always believed that our rules were fair and reasonable. That was all the background. Here's the reason I'm posting. In January, Bea approached us explaining that our occupational center was offering courses and she wanted to take them so she could become certified and get a better paying job. The tuition for the course, plus extra fees because of books and other required supplies, would come out to over $10,000. Ben and I wrote her a check because, as I said, we will help all of our kids with their education. We asked about 2 weeks ago if she would be having a graduation ceremony, and Bea replied that she didn't know. Ben and I called the occupational center to ask so we could make sure to get the day off work. We asked for 3 different workers who all confirmed that the course Bea claimed to have been enrolled in hadn't been offered at that center for years. We do more digging and discover that Bea had gambled away most of the money and spent the rest on things that go against our rules. Needless to say, we were livid with her. We couldn't believe that she would lie and betray our trust like that. We told Bea that we had expected all the money paid back by the end of the year and for her to pay us a $400 monthly rent. If not, she's out of the house. Time to grow up, be an adult, and take accountability. Bea's biological mom, Zoe, is calling me a jerk and trying to make it seem as if I'm the wicked stepmother and just hate Bea. She's saying things like I've turned Ben against Bea and Bea can't do anything fun anymore because of the rent rule. Ben and I feel Bea needs some serious boundaries, but Zoe's words have made me doubt myself. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You know you're never gonna see that money, right? Bea lied to you to keep living rent-free, and she scammed you out of $10,000 on top of that. I'd kick her out right now, not wait 9 months for her to cause more mischief. By the way, in the future, pay the tuition, residence, books, etc. bills directly rather than cutting the student a check. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Bea? Please let us know.
If biological mom has such a strong opinion, maybe Bea should move in with her.
My wife thinks she's an actual princess. I gave her a reality check. For the past several months, my wife has been acting eerily like a kid. I understand that she's playing with our daughter, but it comes across as weird to me to the degree that she plays the role. Our daughter wanted a mini pizza, and so she asked me if I'd make her one. I was, and then my wife said,
"Me too. I'm a princess too."
I told her, "No, you're an adult, not a princess. I'll make you one, but you're an adult." She laughed nervously and said,
Okay, never mind."
Our daughter heard and said,
"Dad, Mom is a princess too."
I just said, agreeing, but I didn't want to have to explain it to her. I did feel bad because my wife changed out of her princess clothes too, but I don't know whether this whole ordeal makes me the jerk. You're the jerk. They're just having fun playing together. Why don't you call yourself a prince and join in? I bet your daughter would love that. Also, princesses can be adults. They don't automatically become queens when they get older. If you look at a list of current princesses in the UK, there's one that's 86 years old. Not the jerk. Your wife is delusional if she thinks she's a princess, but it could be mental health related. Does she have a therapist that she sees regularly? Sometimes adults can act out imaginary roles as a coping mechanism for past issues. I definitely see about getting her something that can help control this sort of thing, but only a doctor can tell you what she really needs. You're the jerk. Kids were playing pirate one day and wanted us to play too, so we did, for an entire evening. We had a lot of playtime like that. Impromptu candlelight dinners when they played dress up, burping contests. Yes, gross, but silly. Some of our best family memories. Kids are experts on how to have fun. Let them help you remember how to laugh. Not the jerk. All of these people claiming how important it is that you play dress up with your kids have no idea what they're talking about. That's how you create entitled kids who literally think they're princes and princesses. My parents never did any of that crap with me, and as a result, I'm a normal functioning human being who never felt entitled to anything. I have 3 kids myself now, and I would never do any of that stuff with them. If they want to have fun, we have educational games they can play. My youngest is particularly fond of Elmo, so just about every day she plays Elmo's Reading and Elmo's Numbers. My oldest 2 both try to watch that Coco Melon crap, and my wife would try to let them. That's when I had to lay down the law, and I straight up told her that if I caught them watching Coco Melon one more time, I'd divorce her in a heartbeat and get full custody. I'm a lawyer who deals with custody cases every day. She knows she wouldn't stand a chance. Guess what? Since then, I've never seen them watching that crap again. I'll be darned if I'm going to let my kids watch this new trash that's literally designed to rot their brains so they'll grow into non-functioning NPC adults the way the politicians want them to be. Edit. Oh, you let your kids watch Coco Melon all day and you think that makes it okay? Let's see where your kids are at in life 20 years from now compared to mine. You suckers. Am I the jerk for locking my sister and her brats out of my room? To make a long story short, my sister, who's 32, and I, 26 female, ended up moving back home at the same time due to lockdown. I'm work from home and she lost her job. Because she has 3 kids, she made a big stink to keep the entire second floor to her and her kids. I got stuck with the creepy, musky basement because of her. Only it turned out to be a dream. I'm very introverted and nobody wanted to go down to the creepy, unfinished, spider-infested basement, so it worked. I spent every month since trying to finish the basement. I finished the floor with epoxy, fixed the water heater on my own dime, got a split unit for heating and cooling, exterminated. Then I installed some nice track lighting, got a mini fridge and foosball table. Now it's my own personal clubhouse. Until recently, when I noticed someone was stealing my energy drinks and messing with my game consoles. Nobody confessed, so I bought a lock and a key for both doors, gave my dad the only spare, it's his house, and locked up on Thursday so I could go to an office meeting. That's when we found out it was my nephew because he left his stuffed toy in there and apparently whined all day until my dad got home and let him in. Now my sister is raising heck about how I shouldn't get so much space to myself since I don't have kids, that I don't pay enough rent to justify it, that nothing in this arrangement is fair, and she's demanding that I leave the space open as a family room. That was not the arrangement though. The basement is my room, and I'm the one who spent all that time and money fixing it. Nobody wanted to be there until I was finished with it. Things got heated, and I called her kid a filthy brat, because he is. He gets mud everywhere, never washes his hands, and he's broken just about every console she's ever gotten the kids. And now she wants me kicked out of the house. Am I the jerk? Quick update. So after we all cooled down, I did talk to my father. He said he has zero interest in letting the kids go down there. When my sister tried to protest, he pointed out to her that the place is still not safe for kids. There are still rat traps, exposed wood. He pointed out that she herself kept screaming about there being mold. There isn't. So he doesn't want any of the kids going in there. And unless she's willing to pay for an inspector to check, she's not, she has no say. So that shut her up really quick. Then she got into it with me for the filthy brat comment, and I was about to apologize because I was heated. It was messed up. Only Dad hopped in at that moment and chose to have a serious conversation with her about the youngest not washing his hands. He apparently ruined several leftovers in the fridge last week and slimed the butter. I don't know. I don't want to know. Which my dad did want to bring up anyway, because the kid has a problem and won't bathe. But I stepped out at that point because it sounded like he was mad. Very few things make my dad mad than having to throw away perfectly good food. It's one of his triggers. So everything is shaping in my way for now. Not the jerk. You had an arrangement. She got the second floor, you got the basement. The lock is a great idea and I love it. Don't engage in the argument. It's not her house, it's your dad's. So as long as your dad isn't asking for you to leave, just go gray rock over her complaints. Don't fight, just ensure you're good with your dad and ignore her. Maybe consider keeping the door locked when you're there too, if she's gonna raise a fuss. Sister loves to roast my husband. He expects me to defend him. My husband, 31 male, and I, 30 female, have been married for 3 years. About 4 months ago, we found out that I was pregnant with our first baby. We were overjoyed and told most of our family about it early on. My husband didn't want to reveal it to our friends yet, and so I didn't. It was incredibly hard for me, especially because I couldn't tell JJ, 30 female. JJ and I have been best friends since we were 14. I love her so much, and we tell each other every single thing. But I decided to respect my husband's wishes this time. JJ also moved 3 hours away from us earlier this year, so she doesn't visit as much either. Naturally, over the past month, more and more of our friends have gotten to know about it. But I couldn't find the right time to tell JJ, and my husband didn't insist much either. Yesterday, JJ visited us, and I revealed the pregnancy through a small box that said, "You're an auntie now," with a baby onesie. Now JJ's a little goofy, which is what I love the most about her. She doesn't care what others think and is just a very entertaining person in general. When she saw the text, she immediately started screaming and then cried and hugged me. It was a very emotional moment for both of us. My husband seemed pretty happy about it too, although he's known to not adore JJ's amusing behavior sometimes. She's a huge jokester and she loves to roast him. After the reveal, she gave him a big hug, then a pat on the back and said, "Darn, Mike, didn't know you could do that." This was clearly a joke and everyone in the room let out a laugh. My husband was not very happy. He responded with, "You know, this is why you were the last one to know about this," in a very passive-aggressive tone. JJ was taken aback and confused. She asked me if that was true, and when I responded with an explanation, she said she was kind of hurt, but was happy for us. The excitement died down in the room after that, and everybody left soon after. I got really mad at my husband for saying that to JJ, but he says that he's tired of her cracking jokes and not taking things seriously. And most of all, he hates that I never take his side. Knowing JJ, she's really just kidding most of the time, and I don't think there's anything to be that offended over. My husband thinks I'm being a jerk here by not defending him. What do y'all think? Am I the jerk? She's a huge jokester and loves to roast him? And I'm assuming your husband has expressed his displeasure at this behavior in the past. It doesn't matter if JJ likes to roast him. If he doesn't also like it, and he clearly doesn't, then it isn't roasting, it's bullying. And like many who have been bullied continuously, he had finally had enough and clapped back. Was it mean? Yes, but so was her bullying. If you don't have the awareness to see how her bullying affects your husband, that's a you problem, and you don't get to blame him when he stands up for himself. You're the jerk, and you need to talk to JJ about her bullying him. After you have a serious look at how you've helped enable this behavior for years, and apologize to your husband about it. Everyone sucks here. You and your friend, not your husband. It sounds like she likes to roast him and he doesn't like it. That's not entertaining behavior. This probably isn't the first time he's reacted to one of her roasts, and it's probably not the first time he's talked to you about it. He says he's tired of this. If she doesn't take him seriously, why wouldn't you step up and say something to her? You say she doesn't care what others think. She should care what your husband thinks about what she says to him. You should too. Am I the jerk for suing my girlfriend after she had my 1967 Impala taken to the scrapyard? I'll try to keep this short. I had a 1967 Impala 4-door that I bought in February 2019. A couple months ago, I bought my first house that had a 2.5-car garage. I moved the car in and started tearing it down for a complete restoration. I had the body in one bay and the chassis in another, plus the whole garage filled with parts. About 2 months ago, my girlfriend came to live with me, and the whole time she's hated that car. She wants to park in the garage, but I have 2 acres of land with a lot of nice places to park under shady trees, or even in the barn if it has to be inside. I tell her tough luck, it's my house, and it's not like I can just throw it back together real quick. Anyways, I was out of town for a couple days on a business trip for the small local company I work for. When I got back, my girlfriend was all smiles, making me food all the time, doing all the chores, all of that. I thought maybe she was just happy to have me home, but then I realized that I didn't see her car in its usual spot. I asked her where she parked so I could make sure I mow that area and keep it clean, and she said not to worry because she parked in the garage. I asked how, and she told me to go check it out. Turns out that while I was gone, she hired some people to come over and move everything related to that car, including the drivetrain, body, and chassis, and all parts, and take it to the local dump and scrapyard. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I had spent over $11,000 on that car, including new parts, services, and the car itself. I told her that I was going to be taking her to court for that, and she brushed me off like I was being dramatic. I told her that it's done between us and to pack her things and leave. I admit I was really angry, but I did end up getting a lawyer, and as I have all the receipts for all of the money I spent, and I have her on my house security cam footage letting the guys in and watching them take it all, I think I can win. Her family and friends are absolutely blowing me up, saying it's just a stupid old piece of junk, and that she cannot pay back all that money I spent, and that I should just let it go. But I've been putting all of my time, effort, and money into that car for a year and a half now, and I'm going to get justice for what she did. Am I the jerk? Edit. Thank you so much for the support. I'm glad I have some people on my side. I got a call from her mom about 20 minutes ago, and she told me that I was ruining her daughter's life over a stupid car. I told her that she ruined her own life. I've been gathering documentation, and I'm about to head down to the police station and file a report, as suggested by a lot of you here. Once again, thank you all. Update. Went to the police station last night, was told to come back in the morning. Just got back and filed an official report against her for grand larceny and grand theft auto. I showed them all of the receipts that I had for the car and the footage of her letting the guys come and take it, as well as the title for the vehicle in my name. They said that they will be in contact with all three parties, me, ex-girlfriend, and the junkyard guys, soon, and they hopefully will be able to recover some or all of the car. Just have to wait now. Huge update. They found my car. The junkyard guys apparently were in the middle of hiding it when the police came to ask them questions. It was on a forklift, and they were going to put it on top of a pile of cars that was hidden behind more piles of cars. They said it was theirs and that they had the title, but obviously didn't have the title for it. And since they matched the VIN on the chassis and body to the VIN on my title, it was obviously mine. I know at least one person there has been arrested. I think he was on the camera footage I talked about earlier, but I don't know if it was the boss or whomever, or even his specific charge. They also told me that they would be looking into the specific junkyard for any other vehicles reported stolen. They said they haven't been able to get in contact with my ex just yet, but they're working on it. I'm just so glad they found my car. Luckily, I made quite an album of pictures detailing me tearing down the car, and so I can use that to prove what parts they had were mine, so I can hopefully get most or all of it back. Police haven't let me take it back home yet, as they say it's evidence or something, so hopefully I can get it back eventually. Thank you all so much for the support and advice. She's gonna be all right. Not the jerk. Sue her. Sue her for the cost, plus a few extra thousand for the time and money. Have her prosecuted for theft, destruction of private property, and have the guys that came to get it prosecuted for receiving stolen goods. Nail them all to the wall. So you want us to adhere to the company hierarchy? Sure. So I work as a mechanic in a sewage treatment plant. It's a very laid-back job. In fact, 3 out of 8 hours was spent not working. I know that it sounds like we're a bunch of freeloaders, but it's just because the tasks we perform are simple and we do our best to do them ASAP. Anyway, the hierarchy in our plant is quite complicated, but the most important thing is that as a part of a mechanical department, our only supervisor on site is our master. At least I think that's the English translation. Both plant manager and plant master are not our supervisors, yet they, as well as other workers, asked us to carry out some jobs for them, which we gladly agreed to do, even despite most of them being out of our range of duty. You know, welding racks back together, installing a new faucet, etc. Most of the time, we weren't doing anything else anyway, but sometimes we were preoccupied with our own tasks. Still, the plant master always told us that his tasks were more important and to just leave what we were doing for some other day. Due to this, many of our old tasks were left for another day, which because of constant requests were left sitting for months. Still, it was always his jobs that had the priority. Now is the right time to address the tense situation we had with the plant master. He's best buddies with the manager, usually blaming all of the shortcomings of his team on us. Stuff like something not being cleaned, stuff that's not a mechanical failure, stuff that's simply not important enough, or stuff that's beyond our competencies and should be taken care of by a specialist company. He also had this very annoying habit of rummaging through our tools, taking parts, and using our machinery without asking. It's very annoying, but whatever. It's important to keep good relationships in work. But then he dropped the bomb. He had the list of all of our old tasks that were left unfinished. The list that wasn't that long, by the way, about 8 things, 3 of which were outside of our competencies. and said that our manager and CEO will be waiting in the conference room to give us a lecture and to take away our bonuses. The meeting went very roughly. It started with the CEO saying, "You can say goodbye to your bonus this month," then proceeded to give us a lecture about the importance of our tasks. Then he kept blabbering about us threatening our master, plant master being the only supposed witness, etc. When the CEO was talking about possible solutions, the plant master did the worst calculation of his life. He proposed adhering to the company structure and proper workflow. Well, we didn't want to oppose since we knew what that meant. We talked this over with our master. Now every time the plant manager/master wants us to do something, we reply with, "We don't take jobs in the corridors. We have our jobs to do. Sorry, we can't afford to leave what we're doing. We have it planned for today." Or, "Does our master know about this? We can't do anything without him ordering it to be done." By now, no one has been to our workshop for 4 weeks. No extra jobs, no side jobs, nothing. Only 2 tasks a day that usually take 30 minutes each with a team of 5. And it's all by the books. We definitely respect the company structure and have a proper workflow, focusing on our tasks. P.S. Most of the backlogs were also due to stuff breaking down, which is mostly due to a faulty infrastructure. Most of the pipes are clogged with sedimentation and require thorough cleaning and rebuilding. But I guess it's cheaper to simply replace a pump which had to push the same amount of sewage through pipes that have narrowed by 2 times at this point. Those poor pumps. And yeah, the pipework and technology is the responsibility of the plant master and plant manager. Am I the jerk for wanting to keep the money my grandmother left me and her estate and not give it to my parents? My grandmother passed, leaving her estate to her 2 sons, my dad's brothers, and my brother, 23 male, and I. My dad had estranged my grandmother for the last 15 years of her life, but my brother and I maintained a relationship with her. In her will, she specifically noted that she was giving the share of her estate that would have otherwise gone to my father to my brother and I, divided in 2. My parents have been extremely adamant that this money is theirs, that my father should have never been written out of the will as the money was his birthright. My mother has told me that this money is the only thing that will give my dad his dignity back, so that he is of equal value to his 2 brothers who received money. My grandmother wronged them, and from their perspective, she did this to get back at them. I've dealt with my uncles and the lawyers of the estate for the past 2 years as all of this has unfolded. I maintained a relationship with my grandmother up until her last day. I visited her while she was in palliative care. My father did not. He sent a text message to her through my cell phone during her last week. My father and mother have cut me off from the rest of my extended family, both on my dad's side and my mom's side, all for reasons I still don't entirely understand as I was very young when it happened. They've told me a bit about why this happened, but it's been very surface level. They say it was because the family judged them beyond reasons that were repairable. When speaking to my parents about wanting to give them some money, but keep some for my future and to help me pay off my student loans, they responded by telling me that I'm not poor enough for this money. I don't eat Kraft dinner every night. I have a full-time job, and my level of stress financially is incongruent with my spending habits. Also, that I have trouble seeing things from a different perspective, because if I understood why my dad needed this money to retain his dignity, I wouldn't be fighting this. They also desperately financially need this money. My dad is unemployed, and my mom only has her pension for them both. I'm worried my dad will cut me out if I don't just give him my entire share of the estate. My brother is scared of losing my parents, that he's just decided to give them the entirety of his share. I'm trying to stand my ground. I love my parents. I just want them to have some accountability for everything that's happened, and that I maintained a relationship with my grandma, and that means something. They're adamant that money is theirs, and I'm only being given it because they allowed me to have a relationship with her and didn't cut me off from her. I feel guilty that I will not be maintaining my grandmother's wishes, but I also don't want to lose the only family I have left. Not the jerk. The idea your mom has that money equals dignity is totally materialistic BS mega nonsense. Your money is not your identity, and anyone that's unfortunate enough to think it is, they're deluded. Money is not dignity, money is not character. But that money is yours, legally, rightfully, and morally given by your grandmother. The rest of this BS is just a family squabble about status. Forget that. If your dad wanted to be included in the inheritance, he should have thought about how estranging your grandma would affect that before it was too late. Am I the jerk for rubbing in my family's face my great life? My husband and I got married last weekend. I come from a very poor background and a huge family from a tiny town. We're close, even if I've always been the weird and different one, moving away, etc. Husband comes from a huge, more middle-class family. One of my favorite things to do is host and entertain. I think life can be hard, and making people comfortable or showing them a great time is a really worthwhile thing. It's also fun for me, like a giant crafting project, to plan an event. I love it. My husband does very well, and I've been lucky to have a great career and do the same. Our wedding was the only time likely for all of these people we both loved to be in the same place, to meet and celebrate together, so we wanted to make it special and magical. We were very clear that gifts were not necessary, and I set aside a fund for my aunt and I to coordinate covering any expenses for people who wanted to come but couldn't afford the hotel, outfit, etc., but quietly. I know a huge wedding is a waste to many people, but it isn't to us. We did 3 days of events and covered meals and open bars for 300 people. We had a short performance, a big welcome party with a kind of carnival for the kids, gift bags for everyone, and lots of surprises. It was so fun to watch all the joy and everyone smiling and happy. Everything was optional. We shamed no one who came to only one part or couldn't swing it. At brunch, the final day, my aunt pulled me aside and asked me to go to my cousin's room and console her. She said she had been sobbing all night and morning because her wedding, in August, would be nowhere near this level, and she thought all our family would hate it and judge her. My heart broke. Every wedding I've been to with my family has been low-key, maybe in a barn or a rec center, someone's backyard. No one has ever judged or looked down on this, nor would I, just different styles, and we always have a great time. I left my guests at brunch and spent the better part of an hour with my cousin, trying to assure her of all of the above. I told her a wedding is a celebration of love, not money, etc., and that we were all very excited. She finally got weirdly calm and stopped crying, then looked me dead in the eye and said something like,
Well, you don't need to worry about it because you're not invited anymore.
Then locked herself in the bathroom. I came back to brunch, and most everyone was gone. I was crying, but didn't want to make a scene, and just got out as fast as possible. My husband keeps telling me to not take it to heart, but I hate that something we worked so hard to make fun and memorable for people ended up making someone I love feel terrible. And now my aunt, her mom, has started telling people that I just did this to rub in my family's face, my great, fancy, rich life, etc. I feel sick. I was so happy and proud, and now I feel so stupid. Did I really mess this up that badly? Am I the jerk? First, congratulations. Second, not the jerk. A quote, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." You had an amazing celebration. Please don't let one person spoil it. You will never be able to please everyone. You can't cater to everyone's desires. Do what works for you. Be humble and gracious, and it sounds like you did this well, so major props, and let the rest fall as it may. I don't have a ton of evidence to back this up, but part of me thinks that she/they were hoping to guilt you into offering money towards your cousin's wedding. Her mother and her being so distressed about how her event wasn't going to be as fancy, emphasizing that she was worried about being judged for her less expensive options. It just feels like she may have been attempting to manipulate you into offering cash to make things fair. Then, when you didn't follow the script, she dropped the poor little me act, got mad, and uninvited you. Now, to cover it all up, they're bad-mouthing you everywhere because painting you as selfish and nasty is a great way of covering up what they were trying to do. You're not the jerk. Either your cousin is hilariously oversensitive, or they were up to something. Uninviting you because your event was nicer is such a massive overreaction. Not the jerk. This is why the greatest book ever written on getting rich, the author talks about how important it is that you disassociate yourself completely from anything and anyone having to do with poverty. They will not be happy for you, and at best, they will feign joy for your success. They will be jealous and expect you to hand over your wealth to them. They will talk about how you changed because you don't give them the things they expect from you. I grew up in the projects and built my own clothing line into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and I learned early on that does money change people? Yes, but it's not always the one who makes the money that changes. It's the people around them that you need to watch out for. My own brother broke into my house and stole over $50,000 worth of my jewelry because I wouldn't pay his mortgage for him that I told him from the jump he never should have taken on. Now he's in prison off some other charges he caught.
But even when he's getting out, I ain't gonna have nothing to do with his dumb self. I grinded hard for everything I have, and I'ma stay away from broke individuals until the day I die.
Am I the jerk for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? My wife and I hired a babysitter, Adeline, who's 18, for our kids, who are 8 months, 2, 4, 5, and 7, a few months ago. Adeline is great with our kids, and she's the only babysitter that can handle so many kids. A couple problems are that she's constantly late. It's usually no more than 5 minutes. She has been 10 and even 15 minutes late, however, but it's still irritating. Another thing is, after she gets everyone asleep, she spends the rest of the night on her phone or laptop. She never cleans up in the playroom because she claims it's always messy, and she doesn't know where anything goes, and will only clean up what she did with the kids. For example, Adeline did an art project with my older 3 kids and cleaned the counters and the floor after that art project, but she didn't pick up the toys that were in the living room or do the dishes. Another problem is that her outfits. I've asked my wife to talk to her about it, but she refused, even though she admitted that she agreed about Adeline's clothes. My parents are in town, and they wanted to take the kids on a walk. While on the walk, they saw Adeline on a run wearing an outfit that barely covered anything. Everyone saw her, and my kids talked about it for days. My 5-year-old has also been talking about how pretty she is and that he's going to marry her when he gets older, which is completely unacceptable. I decided to fire her because of the reasons I listed above. When I told my wife, she started screaming at me because she thinks Adeline is a great babysitter and is reasonably priced. I told her Adeline is a bad influence and I don't want her around my kids, but she's refusing to speak to me until I call Adeline back and offer her job back. She even wants me to offer her a raise if she says no. Am I the jerk for firing the babysitter for being a bad influence? I cannot stop laughing. So much you're the jerk. If you want someone to clean your home, that is a separate service for which you must appropriately pay. From what your wife said, you're already underpaying the babysitter, so I'm sure your wife is fine with her being a few minutes late. You're already getting a great bargain. I'm sorry you're such a lazy slob that you don't clean your own house. I'm thinking it's best for Adeline that she no longer works for you. You're clearly a creep, and it's not safe for her there. Stepsister destroyed my books, gets her trip canceled. I'm 16, female. My dad married my stepmom 2 years ago. She has a daughter who's 16 called Bianca. Bianca and I don't like each other. She thinks I'm a spoiled brat and that I have a princess complex because both my parents came from money and I always get what I want. This is by no means true at all. While my parents bought me lots of things, I have a part-time job and keep my grades up to earn everything I ask for. One of the things I love the most are books. Fantasy, romance, crime, mystery, I love them all. My mom and I share this hobby, so we're always buying books and reading them together. I also have a Nintendo Switch and a TV in my room. Aside from my laptop and my phone, those are my most prized possessions. My sister is always asking to borrow my things, clothes, makeup, my Switch, or my books. I let her use the first 3 because I don't really care, but when it comes to my books, I don't let anybody else have them. A few weeks ago, she came and asked me to take 1 or 2 because she saw the guy she likes reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I happen to have that book, though I've still yet to read it. I said no, and we had a discussion because I was so spoiled to share. She asked again by dinner, and I said no. Then she asked by breakfast and tried to get my dad and stepmom in. Both of them agreed with me. I sent her a few links of the book on discount, and I thought that was it. But 3 days ago, when I came back from my mom's house, I found 7 of my books, including the one she wanted, ripped to pieces. Some big chunks of my wallpaper missing, and a few posters on the floor all destroyed. It was no mystery. As soon as I told my dad and stepmom, they knew it was her and grounded her. She was supposed to go to LA in June for her birthday, but her mom said she wasn't going to be paying for it, and since her dad won't either, he's a deadbeat, then she'll pretty much just miss it, since some for the money will be mine to replace all the things she destroyed, and the rest will be kept as punishment. She's now losing it on me and calling me every name under the sun because I ruined her trip and the guy has been talking to another girl. You know you're not the jerk. Your stepmom sounds awesome, considering she's making her daughter face consequences for her behavior instead of enabling it. OP.
I was confident I was not the jerk, but some of my friends said that I went too far for some books because I can always replace them and that it was not that big of a deal compared to her trip because that was for her birthday. No, they're wrong. It doesn't matter what the items were. That's irrelevant. She destroyed things that didn't belong to her, and now she's facing the consequences. Karen Aunt demands to live with me because she needs a caretaker. Growing up, my 23 female aunt, who's now 45 female, was child-free in the sense that she actively wanted nothing to do with kids, and she would avoid coming to events where kids would be there. She would tell my brother and I that kids were dirty and scream and annoy everyone until they learned to act like adults, which I guess isn't wrong, but still, it was hurtful for us to hear that as we were growing up. What I found the worst about my aunt was how she used to talk about my mom, her older sister. My mom has been single since my dad abandoned us for his affair partner. I've overheard my aunt commenting that my mom's selfish for having kids and she got around, so our dad probably isn't even our real dad, which is why he left my mom. When I was 10, I finally told my mom about these comments. She refused to keep us in the same room as our aunt, and we've really had no relationship with her. When I was 11, my aunt moved from the same neighborhood as my mom and grandparents to a house out in the country about 2 hours away, and I had no real contact with her for the next 7 years. When I was 18, my aunt started trying to reestablish a relationship with me, but I kept my contact with her low. I've been working for a few years, and I've saved enough to rent my own apartment. This year, my aunt was hit by a car and has had a whole slew of health problems. Because of that, she's been needing to visit the hospital frequently and will need to start physical therapy. Her house is really far from most health facilities, and because she lives alone, she hasn't got anybody to take her back and forth every day. She doesn't have the money to buy a new house in a more convenient location, and she doesn't want to sell her current house because it has lots of land for her dogs, and she wants to continue living there when she gets better. The rest of my family lives in the city and can access all sorts of health facilities much easier. My brother lives at college. My grandparents have moved in with my mom, who's still angry at my aunt and refuses to talk to her. That leaves me. Because I was hesitant and not outright rejecting contact with my aunt, she thinks she still has a chance to live with me. There's two major issues with this. One, my aunt has 2 dogs that she adores, and I don't want to take care of them while she's still recovering. And 2, I don't really like my aunt, and I don't want her living with me. I'm afraid that a relationship would cause a divide in the family. I'm also worried she'll find out things about me and gossip about it like she did with my mom. Fundamentally, if I had a closer relationship with my aunt in my childhood, I might have considered it. But because of her justifying being cruel by her child-freeness, I don't think I'm going to make this accommodation for her. I told her as much, and she called me a jerk for abandoning her when she's vulnerable. My mom and brother support me, but my grandparents told me to just go along with it so that we can all stop the fighting. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You should just tell her that people recovering from injuries are dirty and scream and annoy everybody until they can take care of themselves again. You reap what you sow, Auntie. Or tell her, just like you're child-free, I'm jerk-free. I don't want anyone who treats people horribly, human or adult, in my home. OP, there are so many child-free people who seem to treat kids like garbage. One thing they don't seem to realize is that one day they'll get old and they'll need help from someone younger, unless they're incredibly wealthy, I guess. The thing is, they don't deserve that help. They haven't earned it. Older people get sick, get dirty, and need more help. It's the circle of life, and they often rely on the help of all the kids they cared for to assist them in their old age. People have understood this for a long time. Your aunt should have thought about that before she was so awful to all of you. Seriously, just tell her no. Don't open the door to let someone like that in your house. Okay, boss, I'll hit my KPIs. This story came from 5 years ago when I worked for a small IT MSP company. We had 4 full-time techs, with the newest tech having about 5 years of experience and me being the most seasoned tech with nearly 15 years of experience. Between the 4 of us, we managed about 1,000 PCs and about 20 servers spread out over about 30 clients. None of us were assigned to a specific client. We would all take turns grabbing whatever tickets came in. All of our work was lump sum or contract work, so we never had to worry about how long a problem took to fix or how much it would cost the client. We had an account manager who handled all of the billing and things with the clients. It was a dream job for a tech.
We got to show up and do our jobs and not have to deal with sales or billing or any client drama. I not only had the most experience, but was also the most self-motivated. I would often come in early and get started on the tickets that came in after hours, and I would assist the other techs if they came across a complex problem. Everyone, including the owner, referred to me as the senior tech, even though that wasn't my title. After 2 years of working there, I decided to talk to the owner about a raise. I brought all kinds of information to our meeting, showing that I closed the most tickets and received the most positive feedback from a survey we sent to our clients. He agreed to give me a raise, but said he wanted to think about how much to give me and that he would get back to me. A few weeks later, he called a company meeting and announced that he had decided to change some things and that he would no longer be giving anyone raises. Instead, he would set up KPIs, key performance indicators, and the entire tech team would receive weekly bonuses based on hitting those numbers. I didn't like this at all, as it meant my pay was dependent on the performance of everyone on the team and not just me. I found out later one of the other techs had also asked for a raise, so this was the owner's solution to pay us less. The KPIs were simple enough. If a ticket came in, we had to acknowledge it within 15 minutes to achieve a score of 100. If we missed the 15-minute window, the score for that ticket was 0. There were a total of 10 things we had to hit, including how long the ticket was open before we marked it as complete. If the total score for the week was above 90, we each received a $100 bonus. I saw major problems with this bonus system, and I shared my concerns with the owner. He got very annoyed with me and said, "Just hit the KPIs." Cue the malicious compliance. We all figured out pretty quickly how to game the KPI system. We could acknowledge a ticket in the system, but it didn't check if we had actually called the client. We would just email and mark the ticket as reached out to the client. A big issue is that sometimes a client would put in a low priority ticket and ask that we schedule it for sometime the following week, but that would make us miss our KPI. So we would start hounding the client to schedule it sooner, and if they weren't available, we would simply close the ticket. We quickly learned to hit our KPIs and start getting a bonus every week. However, it caused our customer service to drop, which is exactly what I had warned the owner of. During the previous 2 years, we had never had a complaint about our service, but now there were multiple complaints every week. The whole process added a ton of stress to us as we all started to fight when someone missed a KPI, and we all started to work late on Fridays to try to get in those last few numbers. After 2 months, the owner finally realized he had made a mistake. He removed the bonus system without giving us a raise and asked us to go back to how things were. At this point, I was so stressed, I had already started looking for another job and we had lost 2 clients. I was the first to put in my 2 weeks notice, but before I left, the other 3 techs had all put in their notices as well. The last I heard, the company had lost over half its clients and the owner had to bring in several new techs, paying them over 20% more than I had asked for in my raise. Am I the jerk for causing a scene and leaving a free vacation? My brother, Nate, and his wife, Jen, invited me and my daughter, Maddie, who's 10, to go on vacation with them and their kids, Laura, who's 12, and Danny, who's 9. Nate and Jen are extremely well off. They both have high-paying jobs and earn around $350,000 a year between them. Maddie and I are middle class. I own a small house, and Maddie goes to a private school. Maddie has a good life, but it doesn't compare to her cousins. My brother and Jen rented a house for us and paid for the rental, all of the food, and all of the activities. The only thing I paid for was gas when driving myself and Maddie to the house. I have to say, Nate and I don't get along very well, but I have a great relationship with Jen, mostly because of how they are with the kids. Nate tells the kids they don't have to be nice to anyone, never encourages them to share their toys, and doesn't discipline his kids. Jen is the opposite. She constantly tells the kids to share with their cousins and will punish them if they're being rude to the other kids or adults. Now to the vacation. They rented a 3-bedroom house. Nate and Jen had the master bedroom. I had the second bedroom with a double bed, and all of the kids were going to share a room with 2 bunk beds, 4 beds in total. The first night was pretty rough. The kids brought tons of toys, but refused to let Maddie play with them. Jen came in and told them that before they left, they told them that they'd have to share their toys, so either they share or she takes them away. They were a little rude, but mostly fine the rest of the night. The next night, Jen went out to dinner with an old friend, and Nate and I were home with the kids. We were getting the kids ready for bed,
An argument broke out between them because Laura and Danny decided they don't want to share with Maddie and told her to sleep on the couch. I expected Nate to tell them that the bedroom was for all of the kids, but he told Maddie that she either has to sleep in my room or on the couch. I asked if he was serious, and he said yes, that his kids weren't comfortable sharing with Maddie, and since he paid for the house, he has a right to kick Maddie out of the room. I told Maddie to get her bag, and that if she doesn't have a bed, we're going home. Maybe an hour after we left, Jen came back and asked why Maddie and I left. I told her what happened, and she asked me to come back and promised me that she'd take care of her husband and the kids because she wants her kids to have a good relationship with their cousins. I said no, and shortly after we got home, I got a call from my brother yelling at me for causing a scene, creating problems between him and his wife, and being ungrateful for a free vacation. He got our parents involved, and they're agreeing that it's a free vacation and I can't be picky. Am I the jerk for leaving with Maddie? Not the jerk. Nate is one of those parents who wants his kids to win at all costs. He never figured out that the most important thing for a parent to remember is to raise decent human beings. That's what his wife is trying to do. He's bent on raising a couple of jerks. I feel sorry for Jen. Your parents are totally wrong. You did the right thing. Sounds like a miserable free vacation. Am I the jerk for saying no to a promotion? I'm newly married and my husband is upset. I'm a software engineer and my husband works in construction management. I grew up broke, so honestly I feel like I'm loaded right now. I make $120,000 a year and my husband makes $80,000 a year. I've gone from counting literal pennies because my budget was that tight to not having to worry about buying anything that we need. So at work, when my boss offered me a program manager position but said that my salary would be reviewed at the next review cycle, I went and got a drink with the guy who has that job now and the guy who had the job before him. The current guy said he was done out of a raise. He took the promotion when it was implied that one was coming and it never came. And the guy before him, he was making less than I am currently in the role and kept getting his requests for raises rejected. That night, I told my husband about my day and how I wasn't sure if I should take the promotion. We talked a bit and he thought I should, just for my resume. The next morning, I asked my boss what the salary for the promotion would be, and he said that it would be up to HR in the next review cycle. I had heard that that tends to be the absolute minimum they can get away with, and honestly, that role on the job market was valued at $150,000 to $180,000, so I'd be majorly undervalued. I was starting to think I'd have to be a sucker to take that offer. So I told my boss I was grateful to be considered, but I was not comfortable taking on any role until the terms of employment, including compensation, were more fully defined. He said his hands were tied. HR wouldn't renegotiate until the next quarter. I came home and told my husband I declined the promotion, and he was surprisingly mad about it. He said it was something we should have talked about instead of me just going on my own, and that I knew he didn't agree with me. I said that I knew my job. The financials weren't looking great, and you can't get water from a stone, and if I took that, I'd be doubling my workload for nothing. He said I'd have something for my resume that would let me negotiate a higher pay elsewhere, since it'd open up other management roles for me. I said I liked being an individual contributor. I wouldn't enjoy management, so that wasn't something I cared about. He said, "It's all about you, isn't it?" And he was upset because we're married now, and I was impacting both of our financial futures since I didn't want a hard job. And that it was normal to take on additional responsibilities and then have a salary review. I just didn't know because I'm too young, 27 and he's 33, and have never been promoted since I job hopped too much. I said it was an old school way of thinking to slave away for free on the hope that you'd be rewarded. I tried that at my first 2 jobs, and that's why I quit. All it does is tell them that you're cheap and gullible. He called me naive and said that I was too idealistic. Am I the jerk for declining the promotion? Holy cow, not the jerk. I'm a software engineer and I would hate being a PM. It's much more work, but it also is a completely different role. I wouldn't call it a promotion, it's a different job. Your husband could switch careers and make more than $80K if your quite high combined income isn't enough. The only difference is that you were directly offered this position rather than seeking it out. It's a nice cherry on top that it's a crappy offer. Am I the jerk for telling my mother to buzz off and saying she doesn't get to decide what I do with my life anymore? 3 years ago, I learned that my mother had lied to me my whole life. I found out my father wasn't my biological father, that my mother had been married, widowed while pregnant with me, and that she severed all contact from my biological father's family, met my father, married him, and they agreed to never tell me the truth. I only found this out because my maternal grandmother had me go through some old stuff at her house, and I found photos and documents. I confronted my mother. She told me it didn't matter and to leave it be. I confronted her and my father. They told me what I learned hadn't changed anything and to forget about it. I demanded that they tell me the truth, so I got his story. She never said anything bad about my biological father or his family, only that she felt it was best to move on and to let my father be the only father I knew about. She didn't want him to be my step anything. She didn't want me to ever feel like I was anything less than his. She told me I was never my biological father's baby, that she had loved him, but he was in the past. He was in the ground, and his family had no right to stay in my life. My father told me he wanted me to leave it there and to not seek out my biological family. I told them I didn't want anything to do with them again. We were no contact for 2 years, my choice. I was able to find my biological father's family. They were so happy I reached out. They showed me how they had looked for my mother and for me. My mother's family admitted she told them and everyone she knew not to tell them anything about her life and to never share where we were. I got to know them and they became my family. It hasn't always been easy. They have so much grief that they never got to know me growing up, and I feel it too, as well as how robbed I feel that I never got to know about my biological father. I look just like him, and I always wondered why I looked so different from the rest of my family. I also found out my father had set money aside for me over the weeks he knew my mother was pregnant. About a year ago, some contact was reinstated between me and my parents. I haven't forgiven them, and it's not easy to speak to them. They did learn recently how involved my father's family is now, and how I have my biological relatives around. They don't like this. My mother decided to ask about the future, my wedding, etc., and said I can't have both there. I told her if she wants to be there, she'd need to accept that my family will be. She told me I'm choosing someone I never knew over loving parents. She also told me I was her kid. I told her to buzz off and told her she doesn't get to decide what I do with my life anymore. She's still not over what I said, and she called me petulant. Am I the jerk? Holy wow, you are not the jerk here, but wow. She denied you access to important family, literally robbing you of life-forming relationships. And now she's still trying to force you to choose between your families? What on earth is she afraid of here? I'd seriously be asking what exactly she has against them. She's being extremely unreasonable. I'm so sorry. I can't imagine the pain you've gone through and are going through. OP. It's more about what she wanted from our lives. She didn't want the word step to ever cross my mind. Didn't want a non-nuclear family. Knew that my biological relatives would mean I would always know we weren't that. Not the jerk. You don't say how old you are, but you're obviously old enough that you should have been told the truth from the moment it was appropriate and all the way through growing up. Your mother did you and your dad's family a terrible disservice by keeping up this lie. I'm so sorry you missed out on knowing what you should have known. If your mom insists on you choosing, simply say that your dad's family will be at your important events, and if she decides to make you choose, she's the one who gets left off the guest list because she had you all to herself growing up due to her lies. OP, I'm 21 now. You're the jerk. Honestly, you sound ungrateful as heck. You grew up with a mom and dad who loved you and were there for you. I grew up in the system, bouncing around from foster parents to group homes, so maybe I'm biased. But then you find out that your biological father passed before you were born and then decide to cut contact with your parents over it? You sound like you have major issues, and the only people I feel bad for are your parents. You sound exactly like someone who would have pulled the "you're not my real dad" card if you'd known he was your stepdad, so at least your parents got to have a good life while you were growing up before you went all psycho on them. Am I the jerk for telling my mom and her husband they had no right to touch my locket? Background on the locket. When I was 5, my dad bought me a locket with pictures of him, my mom, my sister, and brother, both older. When I was 7, my dad and sister passed in an accident. My locket became something so treasured, I wore it all the time and didn't care if it was a formal event or not. When I was 8, my mom remarried. Mom's husband is Jeff. Jeff had a 1-year-old called Nathan, whose mom was not in the picture. Mom and Jeff then had 2 daughters together pretty quickly. My locket was something they all knew about because they had seen me wear it. Mom asked me a couple of times to add Jeff, Nathan, and the girls, and I told her that I didn't want to. So when I was 16, Mom and Jeff bought me a new locket with their pictures in it. I never wore it, but I put it in a jewelry box that I own. There were some comments and tensions that I never wore the new one. My half-sisters were upset about me not changing which one I wore all the time. I explained why the original was special, and they told me how the new one was more special because it included them. My mom was annoyed at me for how I handled it, and Jeff complained at me for not appreciating what they did for me. I'm 19 now, and I live in a small apartment. My brother lives with his girlfriend. A couple of weeks ago, we stayed at my brother's house, and when I woke up that morning, my locket had been moved. I don't wear it to bed in case it breaks. Went on about my day and that weekend. When I got home a couple of days later, I wanted to look at the photos inside and noticed they had taken out my dad's photo and tried to squeeze in Jeff, Nathan, and the girls. I was angry. I called Mom and asked her if she had seen my locket, and she told me I drove them to do what they did because I was selfish and inconsiderate and broke their hearts for the last 3 years by showing which locket I favored and which family I favored as well. She hung up on me. I tried to calm down and went over to their house, Mom and Jeff's, and I told them they had no right to touch my locket. Jeff told me they had every right to show a more accurate representation of my family and that I was hurting Nathan and the girls by wearing something that didn't include them when I had something that did. I lost it. I told them they did not have that right, and they do not get to tell me who I carry around in my locket or not. I told him he would never be deserving of a spot, told Mom she had lost her spot, and then I left, saying they needed to stay away from me. My brother couldn't believe they did it, sided with me, told Mom to accept we didn't feel the way she wanted us to feel. Mom and Jeff said I was a jerk. Mom said since Dad bought it while they were married, she also bought it and had every right to interfere with it. Am I the jerk here? ETA. Just wanted to add that my original locket is set up where you can add little sections to it and add more photos. I just never chose to do that because I wanted it for the people I always considered my core family or the people I was closest to. Part of me wants to remove Mom now since this happened. Not the jerk. Cut them off. No one gets to decide who's in that locket. It was a gift. Am I the jerk for not upgrading a family and embarrassing my assistant manager? I, 30 male, lost my job during lockdown as an assistant manager. I had to dip into my savings to survive. When I was on my last leg, a childhood friend, James, 29 male, reached out and he offered me a place to stay. He's now the richest person I know personally. As it turned out, he also had a good job opportunity for me. The terms were very generous. When I was 18, I helped him out a little, and he said this was his opportunity to repay me. I met him while working in his father's hotel. Unfortunately, they lost it. So James bought a small luxury hotel, and he hired me as a general manager. I also get a small cut of the profits. I was grateful for the job and felt guilty about the additional benefit, but he insisted on it. He's not interested in running the place, and he wanted someone he could trust. So I pretty much have the final say in any matter. We hired an assistant manager to help me run the place. Bella, she's in her 30s, is more experienced than me, but she had to settle for the assistant manager position. This is the reason for providing the background. If we go by seniority, she should be the GM and I should be the AM. Apart from the occasional haughty attitude, I don't have much trouble from her. A couple of days ago, a family checked in. 2 adults and 2 kids. They were loud and rude. When a bellhop stumbled, they laughed at him and scolded him for dropping their luggage, so not a good first impression. Meanwhile, 2 couples who were clearly on vacation together and waiting to check in helped the staff out before we could. The family was rude to them also. Yesterday, I got a call from my assistant manager asking if she could upgrade someone to our gold suite. We have 5 suites. I always keep our best one in reserve for James or his friends, and if there is a vacancy in any of the other 4, we sometimes freely upgrade when someone asks. Only I can do it. When I got to the reception, it was the husband asking for an upgrade. When my assistant manager is speaking to me, I could see the rest of the staff were uncomfortable. Fortunately, I saw the 2 couples from before coming back for the day, so I told the husband I already had upgraded someone else and politely excused myself and talked to the other couples in private and offered them the upgrade. 2 reasons for that. First, the couples are staying for 2 more nights while the family is staying for 5 more.
Second, their attitude. Later, when my assistant manager came to know of it, she confronted me. She said she had already promised them the upgrade, and I embarrassed her. She demanded me to upgrade the family to our best suite as compensation. I said no and politely pointed out only I have the power to upgrade when it came to the suites. She started blabbering about experience and how I'm ruining the hotel's reputation and called me a jerk. She tried to complain to James, but after a quick phone call with me, he brushed her off. So, am I the jerk? Edit 1. If there are rooms available, any of my staff can ask for my approval to upgrade a guest. I rarely deny them. They generally have good reasons for asking. I encourage this because it makes my staff feel appreciated, and they're the ones who know more about the guests than me as they interact with them more than I do. I need to deal with a lot of things like suppliers, etc. As for the AM gunning for my position, she's barking up the wrong tree. I own part, 10%, of the hotel. I didn't ask for it, but James did it anyway. So doing me over is impossible unless I massively mess up. I realized I didn't give the reason my assistant manager gave me, word count limit. Apparently, the guests complain about the services and also about noise during the night. That was why she wanted to upgrade them to prove that we're the best. That explanation didn't sit well with me, so I asked my staff why they were uncomfortable. Every receptionist, floor manager, etc. gets some leeway when dealing with guests. Within limit, they can give discounts or free meals. They don't need approval for little things. As you can guess, higher the position, higher the limit. From what I gathered, this family is always complaining and kept asking to speak to the manager. My assistant manager kept giving them free meals, etc., but instead of using her code, she is ordering the staff member who brought the problem to her to use their code. As for why I didn't know about this, my assistant manager should be the one informing me about these problems, so I will probably let her go and promote one of the good ones. I still don't know what's going on with this particular family and my assistant manager. Not the jerk. You are the boss, not her. She said she already promised them the upgrade, plus she demanded you upgrade the family? This is where you need to have a sit down with your employee. Document this discussion and put it in her personal file to show that you don't want this happening again. You make that decision, not her. Start acting like the general manager you are. The background information is irrelevant. You're the general manager, she's the assistant manager. Also, be ready to replace her. Start interviewing for additional check-in person. As a former department manager, never stop feeding the beast. Not the jerk. But at the same time, if this story had been written from her perspective, everyone here would be praising her and telling her what a jerk you are. They'd be calling you a nepotism hire and rooting for her to take your job from you. She'd make you sound like a total tool who doesn't do any work and just wants to control everyone. Am I the jerk for buying my boyfriend's daughter a phone? I, 32, female, have been dating my boyfriend for a few months now. Jacob, male, 35, is a widower and has a 12-year-old daughter, Katie. I've only met Katie recently, but she's a lovely girl. Well-behaved, polite, does well in school, absolute joy to be around. She had a birthday yesterday and Jacob organized a party for her. Her grandparents were there, as well as a few of her friends. A week before the party, a package with Katie's gift arrived. Jacob confessed to me what it was. Katie had been begging for a phone for ages, and Jacob bought her a cheap 20-pound phone. You know, the really basic ones. And he ordered the box for an iPhone. I think you all know where this is going. I asked him if he was going to buy her an iPhone, and he said that it was a prank, and he's got some books for her. She loves reading. But she will get that cheap phone, and that's it, and the prank will be funny. I hated the idea. I hate these pranks. It wasn't my place. I barely know Katie, but I could see that she'd be hurt, and I knew that she'd be devastated. So I bought her an older iPhone model, refurbished as a gift. When her birthday came, she was devastated. You could tell. She politely accepted the old phone and didn't make a scene, but was crying in the bathroom after. Jacob thought it was so funny, and her friends mocked her. I calmed her down and asked her to come downstairs as there was one more present waiting for her. When she got her phone, she was so happy, even though it wasn't the newest or brand new. She was elated and the humiliation long forgotten. But Jacob was fuming, told me I was a jerk for undermining his authority and I had no right to spoil Katie. She's spoiled enough. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I can understand where he's coming from. I barely entered her life, and it may seem like I'm trying to bug her affection, which I'm not. He's so angry with me. I don't know if I was the jerk.
I might have made Katie happy, but I hurt him. I'm conflicted. Was I the jerk here? Edit. I did mention it to him and told him how awful it would be, but he told me it would be funny and to relax and that I was no fun. Basically, he wouldn't listen. Not the jerk, but your taste in men is questionable. Cruelly pranking her in front of her friends on her birthday indicates that he's always going to be a jerk. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law that he wouldn't be moving with us to the new house? My wife and I decided to look for a bigger home last month and sell the one that we live in. She told me she's finally ready to have more kids and wants at least 2 more. We currently live in a 3-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms. We have a room, my daughter has one, and my brother-in-law stays in one. Me and him have had our differences in the past, but we're good now. Last week, we went to view a home that looked promising. My brother-in-law asked if he could tag along to see, and I said sure. The house was beautiful, and while we're there, he commented that he would like one of the rooms on the opposite side of the house. I didn't say anything at that moment, but when we got back in the car, he commented again that he wanted that certain room. I straight up told him when the time came to switch houses, he most likely isn't going with us. He looked surprised, and before he could say anything, my wife looked at me and asked why he wouldn't be coming with us. I told her she wanted more kids, and the only reason we're moving is to have more space for another kid. She said the kids could share rooms. I told her it wouldn't be fair to our daughter to sleep in a room with a baby that is definitely going to cry. She turned around and told her brother that she would work something out and that he's coming with us. I got upset and told her brother that he wouldn't, because while I did agree to let him live with us, it was not permanent. It's not the life I pictured living. That he would understand once he gets married and has kids. My wife is upset and is firm on her brother coming with us and told me I'm selfish and inconsiderate of people. I did start to feel like a jerk after I thought about it. Am I the jerk? Stop the house hunting. No more visits to houses. Don't even look at ones that she finds. You have a much larger problem to solve. You're done with the live-in brother-in-law. Time for the bird to fly. Does your wife expect him to live with you forever? Not the jerk if this is a deal breaker for you. Stand your ground and work this out. My significant other and I have a rule for something like this. It takes 2 yeses for a yes and 1 no for a no. We're identical twins, so you have to financially support my kid. Okay, so this isn't my story. This is my best friend Tommy. All names have been changed. Tommy and I became best friends in middle school. We bonded over the fact that we're both identical twins who have a horrible twin sibling. Tommy's brother Jack is a deadbeat who thinks everything should be handed to him. He also is a huge player and has a new girlfriend every few months. This eventually came back to get him when he got one of them pregnant. Now, Jack has no job and he lives with his parents who completely support him. But when they found out that he had got his girlfriend pregnant, they made it clear that he had to get a job if he wanted to stay there. His girlfriend, Abby, also has no job and has the same attitude as Jack. Neither of them wants to work and they both believe everyone else should be supporting them. Tommy has a good job and he makes good money, which absolutely upsets Jack. When they found out Abby was pregnant, they asked Tommy for a substantial amount of money. Tommy refused, which caused Jack to get mad again. This caused them to come up with an insane plan to get money out of Tommy. One day, they confronted Tommy and told him that if he didn't give them the money, they'd just say that he was the father and go after him for child support. They read a story online where a woman actually did end up getting child support from 2 identical twins because they couldn't figure out who was the father. From what Tommy told me, they had pretty smug looks on their faces when they told him. Here's a sum of how the conversation went. Now, I'm assuming this from what Tommy told me, so it definitely won't be word for word, but it pretty much went like this. They were at a party for one of Tommy and Jack's relatives when Jack and Abby came up to Tommy and said, Jack,
Sir, have you changed your mind about giving us the money?
Tommy, no. Jack,
We figured you'd say that, so we have another plan.
Tommy, what plan? Jack,
Well, since you won't give us the money, we thought of another idea.
what are you talking about? Jack,
Abby read online about how a woman was able to get child support from 2 identical twin brothers because DNA-wise, they can't tell who the father was. So we're going to tell people you're the father, and since your DNA is the same as mine, any test will come out positive.
Tommy was a little shocked when they first said this, not because he was worried, but because he'd realized his brother was even dumber than he thought he was. Tommy, I know you smoke a lot, and who knows what else you do, but you seriously can't be this dumb. Jack.
I'm not dumb. I'm a genius. It worked before. Look it up.
Tommy. Yeah, but you're forgetting a very important factor in all of this.
What's that?
The whole having cancer as a teenager thing, the countless rounds of chemo, the multiple surgeries.
Nice try, but people can still have kids. Look it up.
This caused Tommy to start laughing. Jack.
Why are you laughing?
Tommy. Because, you idiot. I had testicular cancer and had to have both of them removed. I have literally been sterile for over 13 years.
Well, they don't know about that.
Tommy. My medical history does. All I have to do is show them and the case will easily be thrown out. This made Jack and Abby mad and they started belittling Tommy, calling him every name in the book. For those worried about the baby, they eventually ended up putting the baby up for adoption. So yeah, as a few pointed out, the girlfriend's name changes in the middle. That's because I messed up and put the real name, so I had to fix it. My bad. My wife rejected my son's very thoughtful birthday gift, so I canceled her party. I, male 36, remarried after my late wife passed. I have a son who's 15. My current wife and I have been together for 2 years. She generally has a good relationship with my son, although they tend to have some disagreements from time to time. My son has background in arts that involves wood. He used to help his grandfather with his woodworking and learned how to make handmade wooden items and uses them as gifts. I planned a dinner party for my wife's birthday at a prestigious restaurant. The day before the party, she was cleaning my son's room and saw what he got her for her birthday, and that was a wooden tree with mine, hers, and his name on it. She talked with him and told him while she thought it was a sweet gift, she asked that he not bring it to the restaurant and give it to her there. Why? No idea. When my son told me this, I just had to call her out on it. She flat out said that she thought the gift looked ridiculous and she didn't want it to be seen in that prestigious restaurant or in front of her guests. I lost it on her and I told her that she should be ashamed of herself for saying this when my son was being sincere and thoughtful. She swore she wasn't ashamed nor embarrassed by his work and even said she'll take the gift, but she simply didn't want it to be seen there. I told her not to worry about it since I decided to cancel the whole thing. She went off on me, calling me unreasonable for outright canceling her birthday over such a trivial thing. I refused to keep arguing, but she threw a fit about how I ruined her birthday and made her lose respect for me and my promises. My son kept the gift since she left the house 2 days ago, and her mom has been chewing me out for my decision and calling me a jerk for treating her daughter like this. It could be that it was not a big deal and I overreacted, but my son was feeling hurt by her request. Holy cow, not the jerk at all. Your wife doesn't sound like a very kind person at all, but incredibly shallow and cruel. This calls for a what the heck is wrong with her. If I had a stepkid for 2 years and this was the gift I got, I would be bawling. It would be the best present I ever got. You want me to be a part of your family tree after you lost your mom? The only way that gifting me that present would ruin my birthday dinner is because I'd cry the makeup off of my face into the filet mignon. Not the jerk. Thank you for having your son's back in all of this. That means more than you know. Cancel the whole marriage. Am I the jerk for wanting my wife to make my dinner? Me, male 25, and my wife of over a year, female 26. We've been together for over 4 years. We've always had a good relationship with each other. It has felt very love-filled. We recently got into an apartment, 1 bedroom, about 700 square feet, so it's not huge. Once this happened, I feel like things may have shifted. I work very long hours throughout the week, with sometimes only 1 or maybe 0 days off in the week, average of 75 to 80 hours a week. I bring home a majority of the money. My paychecks cover almost 80% of our whole income. Not that it affects how I think of her in our relationship. She's able to provide things like fun groceries, snacks, and sweets. And when we go out, she can pay for things like the tip or drinks, and I really appreciate that, and I tell her thank you when she can swing it. She also does most of the chores in the small apartment. Other than that, I'm the person paying for our life. Groceries, toiletries, outings, clothes, makeup, and not to mention rent and all other real bills. She works in a very different field and works 3, sometimes if her job requires, 4 days a week. She's working towards her career, and I'm proud of her on this. Most days, she'll work an average of 6, maybe 7 hours on her work days. This is where the problem has started. A lot of my work nights are late, 12 or 1 a.m. when I get home. I'll pack snacks, but I never get to eat. So a lot of days, I come home hungry for an actual meal. Recently, those nights have been more frequent, and I just don't want to have to cook something for myself after a 13-hour day after doing the same all week. I just want to be able to eat with the minimal amount of work when I get home. The other night, I came home around 1:30 a.m. and found my wife passed out on the couch with an empty personal pizza from Little Caesars. I got excited, thinking that I had a cold one in the fridge waiting for me. Wrong. Annoyed, but not upset, I microwave some Chef Boyardee, scarf it down, and call it a night. The next day, I have the same kind of night. Around 1:30, I get home. There she is, passed out, now with a bowl of macaroni and weenies, one of my favorites. And again, nothing in the fridge for me. Not understanding why she couldn't just make enough for the both of us and put my bowl in the fridge, I woke her up to ask. She gets a little snappy if someone wakes her up, but this time she was really angry, saying that she is not my maid and I'm being lazy trying to make her cook for me. I tell her I'm just hungry after a long day, and it upsets me to see that she cooked for herself and didn't think about me at all. I said she was being inconsiderate, and that really set her off, saying if I want a slave, then she's not it. I told her I don't want a slave. I want someone who seems to care about me. She looked at me with a shocked face and stormed out. Her mother texted, saying that she showed up at their house bawling and how I should be more considerate of her feelings. I haven't even responded because I just feel hurt and not cared for. I just wanted dinner. Am I the jerk? Edit. I really should have mentioned this is a conversation we have had before, and I feel ignored since she barely acknowledges when I've brought it up. These last 2 times are after multiple conversations. Also, definitely didn't want to seem like she shouldn't be sleeping at 1. Passed out is just terminology I use. If I'm dead asleep at 4 a.m., I'm passed out. I appreciate the other things she does for me, like cleaning, but the other 8 hours of free time in her day, I want it to be thought of since I would do the same for her, no questions asked. You're the jerk. Saying she doesn't care about you when she does all kinds of other things for you, chores, dates, etc., is very belittling. I'd be upset with you too. I feel like you could have asked way nicer. I also think you should maybe consider meal planning for yourself if 1 a.m. is not a good time for you to cook. You're the jerk. You can absolutely ask her to cook for you, but interrupting a necessary physical activity like sleep just to ask her why she didn't cook and then accuse her of being inconsiderate and not loving you? You picked the completely wrong way to handle this conversation. OP, learn to take a no. Your wife isn't required to take on making your dinner in addition to everything else she's already doing. You say you appreciate all the things your wife already does, but she is clearly not feeling appreciated if she feels like your slave. My vote stands. You're the jerk. Just because you work past midnight doesn't mean you get to throw a fit when you come home and don't see food. You shouldn't wake someone up in the middle of the night just to ask why was your meal not prepared, especially when there was no prior discussion on this. There's nothing wrong with wanting your partner to prepare some dinner you can eat after you return from work at 1:30 a.m. Just discuss it with her like adults beforehand. Waking her up in the middle of the night and throwing a tantrum is not the way to go. Not the jerk. I hope lots of younger guys see this story and realize that marriage is a complete joke these days. It used to mean finding a partner to have a family with, who you protect and support financially, and in return you actually got something out of it, like a loving wife who enjoyed spending 30 minutes a night making a meal for the family as a display of her love. These days, getting married just means you now have no choice other than to shut up and bow down to her every spoiled and entitled whim, or risk getting divorced and lose half your stuff that you worked hard for while she just benefited from. Happened to me, my brother, and most of our friends. Marriage in 2023, not even once. You're the jerk. She's right, she's not your maid. You seriously mean to tell me you're working 80 hours a week and can't even afford to stop and pick up some McDonald's on the way home like a big boy? I swear, if my husband tried to toddler tantrum crap like this with me, he'd be single in a heartbeat and he knows it. A real man would get home and cook his own food, then cook extra for her in case she's hungry. Don't be surprised when she leaves you for a real man who's not afraid to cook his own meal every now and then.
I can't help but wonder if the roles were reversed, if people would still be—
Whoa, you can't say that, Karen. That really ticks off the Reddit people. Leave the floor wet? All right, enjoy your rotten wood. Back in the early 2000s, my mother, 40 female, worked as a cleaner for a couple places and took me, 13 male, with her to help. One place we worked for was the only real estate place in town. We cleaned up before the people who worked there got in. When I started there, it was small and somewhat dirty. Old smelly cubicle partitions and faded brown off-color walls, ingrained dirt in the linoleum. We cleaned, and I literally couldn't tell the difference after we were done, except the mirror in the washroom not having any spots on it and the floor being wet from the fresh mopping. Then the town started becoming a cottage town, and it decided that they will move to a nicer place. Cottagers might find the griminess a little off-putting. New place had a bit more space, brand new blue cubicle partitions, newly painted walls that still smelled the first day I cleaned in there, and a cheap hardwood panel floor. That floor was a bit of a problem. See, before, when we mopped, we would just leave the water to dry on the linoleum. We could do that because we got there at about 6:30 and they opened at 7:30. The place was small enough that it was mopped by around 7 before we left and would mostly be dry by the time people started arriving. If we did the same thing for this cheap wood floor, my mother was worried we would have water seep into the cracks between the wood panels and rot them. So a new method for mopping was devised. First, I dunk the mop, then wring the mop lightly, mop up, wring the mop again, but fully this time, and then mop up as much of the excess water as possible. This new method actually visibly got a lot more water off the floor. By the time we left, some of the earlier mopped areas would look mostly dry. Good solution, Mom. Couple weeks into the new place, my mother gets contacted by the manager and a new order comes in that we are not to dry the floor. I asked if she explained why we dried it. She had. I found this order a bit baffling at the time, and it only occurred to me today the reason why he ordered this. The manager got in earlier than everyone else, at about 7:15, so I actually saw him a few rare times when we ran late. The old floor would have still been visibly wet in the old place when he got in. The new floor was now dry when he got in. He thought we were skipping mopping in order to leave early. Even though I didn't understand at the time that he thought we weren't doing our job, I, of course, found this new order stupid. I thought, he wants the floors wet when he gets in? Fine. Cue malicious compliance. You see, I did the mopping while my mom cleaned the washroom because I was a young strapping lad and she was my mom, so I did what she said. I now had a standing order from the boss to leave a wet floor, and I was going to do so. From that day forth, not only did I not dry the floor, I now didn't even wring the mop after dunking it. I dipped it in the water and just let water slop off the mop as I pulled it directly out of the bucket. There was no way this was going to dry before he got in. Probably not for an hour after he got in either. 2 weeks after I started doing this, lo and behold, the wood paneling is already starting to separate at the seams. Dirt is accumulating between tiles. It proves impossible to remove. I was a bit shocked at the time at how fast that had happened. 4 weeks into the new mopping routine, the floor was rotting. Was my mother psychic or what? It was apparently very cheap fiberboard with a paper-thin plastic wood grain pattern on it. I would have guessed a laminate wood grain on top of semi-waterproof fiberboard if you had asked me 4 weeks ago. The floor now has visible divots and lines where the plastic paper sank into the deteriorating wood underneath. These trap dirt in them as well. How classy. The floor, not even 2 months after they had moved into the new place, was even worse than the old beat-up linoleum one. At this point, I asked my mother if we should start drying the floor, and wouldn't you know it, she had already asked. The answer was no, leave it wet. Baffling. We cleaned there for another month or so. I barely felt safe walking on the floor, as it was now a tripping hazard with warped parts popping up. It was also disintegrating. Splinters of wood would pop off every time I swept. The floor now had the dubious distinction of being the worst floor I had seen in a place that wasn't dilapidated. Am I the jerk for giving my mom the wrong start time for my birthday lunch so she'd be on time? I'm 22, female. My mom, who's in her mid-40s, is one of those people who's always late to everything. I'm talking family get-togethers, birthdays, graduations, weddings, you name it, she's showing up late. At first, growing up, I just thought it was because she's bad with time, but as I've gotten older, I genuinely believe she likes making an entrance. I personally find it, 1, rude, and 2, embarrassing, because it's not like it happens once in a while. It literally happens at every single function she's invited to that has a set time. Many family members have complained about this. Nothing ever changes. It's gotten to the point that whenever my grandma has family lunches or dinners, she'll tell my mom it starts an hour earlier than it actually does, so she'll be there on time. My mom doesn't know that my grandma does this. It's a joke between grandma and I. This past weekend was my 22nd birthday. My grandma wanted to do lunch for me at her place with our immediate family. The lunch was to start at 2 p.m., but we told my mom 1 p.m. I had plans later that evening to go out for dinner with my boyfriend, so I wanted to leave my grandma's house at around 5, the absolute latest, because I needed to go home and get ready. Well, of course, my mom was late. We called her at like 2:30 p.m. to see where she was because, it's her daughter's birthday. She had just left her house at 2:30 and still had to pick up her boyfriend on her way to my grandma's, 30 to 35 minutes away, so none of us were expecting her to arrive until like 3:30 p.m. She finally arrives 2.5 hours late from the time we told her. We questioned my aunt, and she said she felt bad lying to my mom. Everyone is pretty annoyed, but we all move on. Fast forward an hour later, 4:30 p.m., I have to start leaving. My mom starts getting all annoyed with me that I'm leaving so soon and that she barely got to see me for my birthday. I told her that my life doesn't revolve around her and that she should have been there sooner. She started giving me attitude and listing all these excuses as to why she's late. I couldn't be bothered to hear them, so I left. Later that night, she messaged me saying I was acting like a jerk towards her, and it was rude of me to lie to her about the time the lunch started. My mom and my aunt think I'm the jerk for lying to her. My grandma doesn't think it's a big deal, and they're overreacting. I came here for some outside opinions. Not the jerk, but stop lying to her. Stop accommodating her. Don't hold up any events or dinners or lunches or anything for her. If she arrives to a meal or function and it's over, and the food is either gone or put away, then it's, oh well, should have been here on time. I would never hold up one more thing for her. She's rude and has no respect for other people's time. Am I the jerk for ignoring my aunt and uncle when they came to my house as guests? I, 28 female, live alone, away from all of my family members, working a job that's been my dream job since I was little. I have a pretty static lifestyle that includes my work, sports cars, my house, and nightlife. My aunt, my mom's sister, who's 50, female, and her husband, essentially my uncle, 54, male, sent their only son off to college somewhere near the city where I live in. They wanted to go see their son and asked me if they could stay over a couple of days and see me as well on their way. My mom also insisted I say yes, so I did. They stayed with me for a week on their way to their son's city and 9 days on the way back. While they were with me, I got up around 5:30 in the morning, did my workout routine, and left home at 7. I came back around 11 like I always do. My aunt said I could have managed everything much better and that there was nothing in the fridge when they came to my house. I told them they could order anything they wanted on my account, and there was only fruit and water because that's all I need when I'm home. She also complained that I spent some nights away, which could be avoided, but I'm just used to my routine. My aunt also said I could at least spend one meal with them, which I did on the weekend, but other than that, I've got work. After I explained everything, my aunt said I was being a rude host and that she wanted to see her niece in a much better condition. She even got teary-eyed for goodness sake. I said I can, of course, strive to be better, but this is how my life is, and she came here knowing this. She hasn't spoken to me at all since she went back other than a text saying thank you. My mom says I need to get my life together and apologize to my aunt. Was I the jerk? Edit. They were initially supposed to stay for 2 days each time, and they asked to extend the visit every night. There's a lot to see in the area I live in, and I have plenty of extra space, so I honestly didn't mind them staying as long as it didn't disturb my routine. Not the jerk. They didn't just come for the weekend. They were there for over 2 weeks total. It's unreasonable to ask you to put your life on hold for the duration of their visits. Furthermore, they, and your mother, sort of invited themselves. They should be happy for a free place to stay and eating on your dime for a couple of weeks and leave it at that. Slight you're the jerk. You agreed to host, then you should host. Either that or let them know it's just a place to crash on their way to and from Sun. But as it stands, you knew they wanted to visit you and you agreed with this. So making a little bit of time for them to share some meals, spend an evening, at the very least have some food in your house, would have been nice. Stop complaining about your neighbors. Okay, sure. I had moved in an apartment with a roommate last summer. When we first came in, the biggest part of the sale was the fact that the apartment was freshly renovated and soundproof. This one is important, and you'll see why. So when we got in, my roommate immediately fell in love with it, and I was too. When we moved in, we were very careful not to bother anyone, as we wanted to quickly have a good relationship with our neighbors. Oh, did you see the new neighbors? They only move during the day. They don't make sound during the night. What nice people, kind of deal. And we can safely say it worked. What we did not know, however, is that we were only 3 renters when we first came in. Us on the floor, another family upstairs on the opposite side, and another one on the 3rd floor, with the empty apartment between us. Turns out the Soundproof statement was accurate, but only in regards to the inside to outside situation. When our upstairs neighbors moved, it was a nightmare. Sound from 5 a.m. to past midnight, 5 days in a row, dropping stuff, speaking loudly, yelling, or walking in their apartment with shoes on. Out of frustration on the 5th day, I walk upstairs and meet my neighbor at midnight. I ask them to cease their activities for the night. I have work in the morning and I cannot be kept up all night. I understand they were freshly moved in and they might have had a tight schedule, but midnight was too late to be moving stuff. He didn't reply and closed the door on me. I go downstairs and the sound starts over again. I notify my landlord and he tells me he'll handle it and apologizes for the situation, explaining to me my neighbor was just moving and that he probably didn't understand what I was saying because of a language barrier. The neighbors were extremely loud. I know a lot of Karens will use that as an excuse to talk about their neighbors, but when I say loud, I mean it. There was no stop to their loud noises. It seemed like they couldn't be bothered to hold something without dropping it, or jumping up and down on the floor, or purposely banging things against the wall. I recorded the event and even installed microphones in my home jack to my computer, activating and recording every time there is strong vibration to the house. Over 98 events on Monday, February 14th. I was livid. I sent that to the landlord and explained this cannot continue. First, the apartment was poorly soundproofed, which meant we were hearing every sound at all times. Second, we had notified the neighbors about the situation and they have ignored it. I have notified the landlord to awaken them to our situation. I report the issues several times and even advised my landlord that they were very heavy thuds coming from upstairs, which worried me. He answered with, "Stop complaining about your neighbors already. I have other things to do." I have answered, "Understood, sir. Please be advised this will be my last communication and action to help you in that regard." You know when I said I heard loud bangs? Turns out our upstairs neighbor was doing bench press lifting in his living room, and the heavy thuds I kept hearing was him dropping his weights on the ground. I had warned my roommate about removing anything she didn't want broken from the living room, and lo and behold, 4 days later, the first crack appeared. Then another. The floor was giving up. I moved the couch out of the way and moved the TV and consoles into the bedroom. Fast forward to 3 days ago. After another series of loud bangs, I hear a loud crack, followed by an "oh no," followed by very loud noises. I went to the living room to see my neighbor on the ground with several injuries due to the fact that he just went through the floor and brought his bench and weight rack with him. I called an ambulance and the police. The police asked me if I reported the issue with my landlord, which I could confirm due to my communications being made via email. I sent everything, and I am now, of course, filing to break my lease due to uninhabitable dwelling. The landlord came in yesterday and just proceeded to explode. Told me I should have made him aware that my neighbor was doing dangerous things, to which I answered I had notified him about the very loud sounds and he never investigated, and that he also ordered me to stop complaining about my neighbors. It was not my responsibility to go out of my way to protect his assets if he is unwilling to cooperate with me. My neighbors, roommate, and I are now residing in a hotel until we can find a new place to live. We are now also looking towards adding a bit more salt to the injury by maybe filing for criminal negligence against both our landlord and the neighbor. The first because the apartment was apparently having some flaws, and the latter for endangering us. Had I not caught up on what caused the sound earlier, me or, God forbid, my roommate could have been under that. Anyway, it was a fun week, and I do enjoy the accommodations of the hotel. Never went to a 4-star spa-included hotel before. Turns out the chocolate on the pillow is a lie, and I am very disappointed about that. Edit. As I have advised to a few commentators, I followed up with my roommate, and she did not take pictures of the event. She got a bit mad, I asked, considering what just happened, and questioned my priorities. I then explained that our Reddit story got a lot of attention and some people in the comments requested some visual proof. I will spare you her answer. I will just add that it's okay not to believe this story based on my word alone. If people actually didn't question it, I would be worried. When I posted this story, my only intent was to share my experience, and I thought, malicious compliance, neat. If there was a horrible landlord, bad neighbor Reddit, I would have found prior to submitting this story, probably would have went there instead. I will also add that I'm not an expert or an engineer. How and why something like weights and the like would cause part of the floor to collapse, I cannot say. Was there a structural damage prior? Was there water damage that was never addressed, just covered up? Was the structure just not as sound as I believed it was when I got in? I can't say. I understand some of you might have worked in construction and never have experienced such an event, or have actual reasons to suspect a lie due to personal and professional experience. Once again, you can and should question anything on the internet. I just hope you also apply that kind of skepticism, and I mean wanting proof or the opinion of an actual expert prior to making a decision, to more than just Reddit posts. For those who made us laugh and those who have spoken to us, who have been encouraging and constructive, people who actually gave us advice, I thank you very much. It was very nice of everyone, and I wish you the best. Am I the jerk for laughing at the absurdity of my wife taking pictures of herself cleaning? I, 36 male, work full-time, and my wife, who's 27, stays at home. We'd been married for 5 years. I have a good job, so I'm happy to support her. We do not have kids. My wife is something of a slob. I know this isn't the nicest thing to say about your partner, but she would happily step over a pile of clothes in our living room for a month before actually folding them. During the daytime, she doesn't really cook, clean, or do any housework at all. She loves browsing the internet and watching Netflix, but beyond her interests, she can rarely gather up the energy to do much at all. To be honest, before marriage, when I lived alone, my house was much cleaner than it is now. The bizarre thing about this situation is that she's incredibly sensitive about the fact that she doesn't really do much all day and denies it whenever it's brought up. I do my own laundry, prepare my own lunches, and oftentimes cook dinner. She might do the dishes in the evening, or she'll leave them for the next day. A few days ago, I got really tired of it because a pile of her stuff that I didn't know where to put away had been sitting in our living room for over a week. I told her that she really needs to get it together and learn how to clean, even a little, every day. She fired back that she's not a maid, to which I responded it was clear, because if she went to someone's house, laid on their sofa, and watched Netflix for 6 hours, she would have been fired on her first day. The next day after I get home from work, my wife and I were still kind of going at it. She suddenly approached me and showed me pictures she took of herself cleaning during the day, repeating, "See, this is what I do during the day." I couldn't help myself and began laughing at how ridiculous it was, then said having a fake photo shoot like an Instagrammer didn't mean she was doing a good job around the house. She says I crossed the line. Now she's sulking in her room. I feel like she's trying to emotionally manipulate me, but I could have pushed it too far. Not the jerk, but this sounds like me before I was on ADHD meds and antidepressants. That's exactly what I was thinking. When your brain doesn't brain the same way as other people, you can actually come across as lazy and messy when you're really just struggling. Yeah, the problem here is how does OP approach this topic with his wife without her taking it as him saying, there must be something medically wrong with you to act this way, which I don't think would go over particularly well. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.